What's up, guys? Welcome to DragBoss Garage for a live chat on Sunday night, a nice chilly Sunday night. So I appreciate you guys being here. We already have like 10 or 11 guys here. I see the usual suspects. Don Dodder, yeah, 4 in a row. There it is. Dean Stevenson, good to see you here. Charlie, thank you, Charles, for being here. And Unity Motorsports Garage, thank you, Andy, for being here. So I want to give a big shout out to my daughters, the Bossettes, Izzy and Elena. Thank you guys for giving me the time to be here. And I appreciate you guys being here too, taking time out of your family and whatever you do on a Sunday night. So thank you guys. The last live chat we did with Chad Spire, I'm telling you, it was 3 hours and 25 minutes, and we could have gone in for another hour or two. I bet we could have talked for 5 hours. But, you know, he had to eat and had to go to the bathroom, so that's why we ended that one. But it was a great turnout, and one of the things I will tell you that we were going to do was Darren was going to actually come on towards the end, so it's going to be us three talking. So I think that would be a good turnout to have Darren Morgan, Chad Spire, myself do a live chat and talk cylinder heads. So that'll be coming up. We're going to try to make that happen. I'll probably be at APD this week to make a video, another carb tuning video. I appreciate everybody that's subbed here. I got 30,000 subscribers. Darren and I do. Facebook is doing well, so thank you for that. This month, on the 14th, we have a live chat, Darren Morgan and myself, that's open. Anybody can show up. So that'll be here. Hi, Fred Ebert. It's good to see you. On the 28th, there's another live chat for Knowledge is Power with Darren Morgan. That's going to be Aussie Pro Stock Part 4. So guys that are coming up, we're going to have Hoosier Tires is going to be here. We've got McLeod. I'm still waiting to get them rescheduled. They had some event that they went to. LGM, Shelton Bars will be here to talk along with Terry Wilkes of Wilkes Performance. So we got a lot of live chats coming on, and I'm telling you, you know me, I can talk. So let's see who we are, and then we'll bring in our guest. So Mike Cranston, he's from New Zealand. So it's good to see you. Hi, Tim. Bought Pistons through Mike and actually have another custom order. It'll be emailed tonight. There you go. That's Mike Cranston from New Zealand. Now, guys, our special guest is right here, and this is Mike Knowles from Diamond Pistons. Welcome, Mike, to DragBoss Garage.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, good.
Yeah.
We had a little bit of a technical difficulty, but got it buttoned up by 6:45.
Us old school guys struggle with the computers a little bit.
I'm telling you, I do too. It's crazy when you think it's something and it's really so simple. You know, a monkey could figure it out, but I don't have a monkey here, and you don't either. You got a dog, so
yeah, we got Moonshine sitting right here.
Yeah, but he doesn't do much talking. So, John Wilburn, good to see you too. So, you know, I went to PRI in December and went around and met a lot of people, and I ended up talking to a guy named Joe Long. Now, Joe Long works for like the marketing part of race winning brands, and I talked to him about Diamond Pistons and Dart. He said, you know, let me bring you right over. So I went over and talked to Mike, and I said, hey, Mike, Tim Halster from DragBoss Garage. I'd like to maybe do a short with you or whatever. And he's like, well, like what? What do you mean? Because he's probably never done a short. I said, well, I'm just going to interview and all that. And he's like looking at me like, okay, you know, because he's never done, just like being on the air. But it's like riding a bike. If you rode a bike, you never forget how to do it. And just like tonight, it's one of those things that you either have a rapport with the guest or the people that are our audience, or you don't. And I could already tell when we started talking about Pistons, man, it was just flipping off. Now, Mike, how old are you, Mike?
I'm 57.
So 57. He's still a young man.
Yeah.
So now he's been in the racing industry, guys, for 35 years at least, or over 30, we'll say. Now, we had talked about Pistons and all that, and which we can get into. But really on this channel, I like to get some information on the guy. So you know who you're talking to when you email Diamond Pistons, you know, and Mike's on the other end. So you've met someone. So you have somebody that you can say, yeah, I remember talking to him. I know where he's from. I know that you know, he worked for Barry Grant. So before you worked for Barry Grant, what were you doing out of high school?
Basically, in high school, I went to work at the local auto parts chain.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's where I started, basically, when I was 16, 1985. You know, went to work at the local auto parts chain. And, of course, I was into cars at that point anyway.
Like how? How did you get into cars?
I'd been into it for, reading car magazines, Carcraft magazines, stuff like that. When I was
Hell
like
yeah.
12, 13, I built model cars. I built all kinds of models throughout my childhood. And then, before I got my first car, I remember I wanted a 10-speed bike at that point, and I didn't really have the money to go buy one or what have you. And a buddy of mine gave me a frame. So that was I had this empty frame bike, and I bought all the parts.
Yes.
Built that bike when I was probably like 13 or 14. Back then you didn't have the internet, you just had to figure it out.
Well, hell yeah.
There's no books, no nothing. You just figured it out how to put it together. And I built that. And then of course, once I got into cars, my best friend in high school bought a 68 Camaro. And that was the first car we did everything on. And, we start throughout our high school, late high school, after high school, what have you. We worked on that car. We started out with, back then, what'd you do? You started out with an Metal Rock Performer RPM and a 600 vacuum secondary, right?
Yeah.
And then you did your headers, and then you did the 327, 350 cam because it had a 327 engine in it. Stuff like that. We were in his backyard, and I think we had maybe a Haynes menu or whatever. We didn't have any guidance. His dad wasn't into it, and my dad actually was into cars when he was a kid, but he wasn't into them when I was a kid, basically.
Okay.
He was a police officer, so he didn't like hot rods. So I wasn't allowed to have one. But my friend did, and so we just learned. I remember, like I said, the first time put the manifold on, pulled the distributor. I think it took us like 2 weeks to get it running.
To get the distributor back in. Yeah. Okay. So you learned the trick.
Two 16-year-olds with no experience whatsoever trying to figure that out, and that's kind of where we got started. Of course, I worked at the auto parts store, and was just way into it. And of course, then eventually I got a Camaro, and then I got when I was like 18 through 22, basically. Yeah. I always had 3 or 4 cars at all times. So I had my Camaro, I had a 280Z, which is the only import car I've ever owned. Okay. And I had a 68 Roadrunner, and actually the 68 Roadrunner, I just bought it as a shell. You're going to love this 68 Roadrunner with a 440. Paid $200 for that thing. But that was the first motor I ever built, was that 440, and I built a 440 6-pack for that Roadrunner.
Are you a Mopar man, Chevy man, or Ford guy?
Well, I started out with the Camaro, the 68 Camaro. So I've always been into Camaros and Chevys, but I've always been into Chrysler stuff too, because I was into the Roadrunner and stuff like that. So I flipped back and forth between the two. But like I said, we hot rodded my buddy's Camaro. First motor I ever built, 440 6-pack for that Roadrunner, Hemi 4-speed car and all that. And that was going to be my street race car, because we were way into street racing when I was a kid. That's what we did.
Now, where'd you grow up? What state?
Lakeland, Florida is where I'm from.
Okay.
And in Lakeland, there's a Lake Hollingsworth. It's kind of in the middle of town, and they had what they called the yacht club there. And next to it was a parking lot. So all the racers, hot rodders would gather in the parking lot next to the yacht club at Lake Hollingsworth. And we'd all gather up there in the earlier evening. And once it got later on, we'd drive out to the south side of town, and we'd go out in the country, which was country. Now it's all built up now. But there was a convenience store out there that would close at 10 o'clock, and we'd all park in that parking lot. And then we'd go out the road out there, would go for like miles and miles straight. We'd mark off a quarter mile and we'd street race. And that's what we did throughout high school and all that. We street raced. And of course, my buddy's Camaro morphed into a big block with a tunnel ram and a Dana 60 in the back. And
hell yeah.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So, and of course, he eventually he got his girlfriend pregnant and got out of it, sold it to another friend of mine who outrotted it for a while, and I ended up buying that car.
Oh wow!
And I decided to build a race car.
All right,
because I was getting into racing. I was starting to intend to race because in Lakeland we just street race. That's all we did. But I started going to like Bradenton, and I went up to Gators, down to West Palm, to Citrus Nationals and all that. I'm like, I want to race. I want to drag race. So I bought that car because it had the Dana 60 in it. And I bought it as a shell with the Dana 60 in it. and I was going to build a big block for it, and I ended up having it back halved and all that, and that turned into my first drag car that I raced for a number of years. You can see it right here on the corner. There it is.
Oh, yeah, I see it up in the corner. The black,
yeah.
Is it black?
Yeah, black Camaro. Yep.
Oh yeah, bad. I bet. What did it have in it for a power plant?
So yeah, I turned it into a race car. When I first built it, the first engine I built for it was a 468.
Okay, popular.
So I lost your sound for a second there. You back?
Yeah. How about? I'm okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. I lost you for a second. But I built a 468. Yeah, it was just a cast iron headed 468 cam, had a YMG. I lost. Yeah, back.
It's, you know what it is? I'll tell you what's going. It's your streaming. You know, your internet's kind of delaying and lagging a little bit, maybe.
Right. Sunday night. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, roller cam. The car ran. A first pass ever down the track. It went 10/20s.
Wow,
so that was like the first pass ever. Eventually got the car into the high 9s. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it was a lot of fun. So and eventually I actually blew that motor up. It's things you learn along the way. Valve springs. I didn't change them fast enough. So, and I lost a valve on the top end of the track. I'll never forget that pass because I was at the top, very at the top end, going through the mile an hour. I hit the first stripe, and the car missed. It's turning about 7,600, and I hear a slight miss. And I look over, and the guy is right next to me. I'm like half a fender in front of him, and I kept my foot in it. I'm like,
do it. Yeah.
And it missed, and then it fell off, and I lost that race by half a fender.
Oh.
And then I pulled off the track, and that motor never ran again. It dropped the valve, and it was ugly. It cracked the block and all that. So the next time around, I built a 100 over 427 for it. So a buddy of mine, one of my best friends in the industry, works for Richmond Moto Gear. He used to live in Chicago, and he had a core yard up there, and he found a 427 crank out of a school bus.
Okay.
Well, at least we think it was out of a school bus, but it was still standard. And and it never did get turned the whole time I raced it. That crankshaft was still standard when I sold that car 20 years later. But so we put that and so Dart 320 heads and all that, and built 100 over 427. And that's the way I raced it for another 14, 15 years.
How fast was it?
It went at that point. I was living in Georgia at that point. We were just running the 8th mile. Atlanta Dragway went to 8th mile. So the fastest 8th mile pass was 6:15 at 112.
Okay.
Which is basically high 9 still. Is like 980s, somewhere in that range. But it's it's just a basic back half, Dana 60, stock front suspension, Camaro. So yeah,
just fun, man. That's what it is. That's
power glide. Yeah, and I learned a lot with that engine. I tell you, there's certain things you learn. Like the first time you ever go to a roller cam, you never go back. Jessel belt drive, beautiful things. I would always, wouldn't build a racing motor without a Jessel belt drive. But one of the biggest things I learned was the crank trigger.
Really?
Yes.
I just used one for the first time, and
you'll never build a race car motor without one ever again.
No kidding.
Yeah, that motor. So it's running, 620s, 630s most of the time. I put the crank trigger on. As soon as I fired it up, the thing idled smoother, revved quicker. It was just a night and day difference.
Really?
But okay. I would always kind of shift by feel, and then I'd set my shift light by that, by the feel of the car. And I would turn the motor with the 427. I'd turn it 7,800. Okay. And then I put the crank trigger on, and I remember the first pass down the track, she was still running strong, so I let it run through. And I ended up shifting the motor at 8,200. It picked up 400 RPM with a crank trigger just because it ran so much smoother. And that's when I dropped into the teens. It picked up basically a tenth and a half to 615. So, yeah.
Wow.
It just ran. It was just because the timing was right on the top end. It wasn't, having any kind of flex or whatever you want to call it.
Makes a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with a belt drive too, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm, definitely. They're expensive options, but they make a huge difference. So
pay once, cry once is what I always say. Mm-hmm.
And
now Now, what happened to that car? You ended up selling it, you said?
Yes, I raced it for a number of years, and eventually stock front suspension. You know, it had been gone through with new tie rod ends, but it was all stock stuff.
Yeah.
But what happened was the tie rod sleeve basically was 50 years old, and it stretched and it broke and sent it right into the wall. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but it's still running when I wasn't going that. The car had gotten loose on that pass, and I had shut off. But the problem was I was in the middle of the track, and I was about to hit one of the little orange boxes. So I just gave the steering wheel a little bit of yank to miss the orange box.
Yeah.
And so I was only going like 30 miles an hour at that point. But when I gave it that last yank, that thing cut and
bam,
right in. Yeah. Motor was still running.
You could do. No, you're like, did you try to correct
it? You can do at that point. It's going to go wherever it's going to go. Yeah.
That's it, man.
So it's just like a split second. But the motor was still running. Motor was still good.
Jesus.
I had to shut it off.
Was it bad that you couldn't fix it, or what did you do?
Oh, no, I was just at a point where I had acquired some NASCAR motors, some R5 P7 engines, and I was wanting to go land speed racing. I was thinking about it, and I acquired these two motors for one of my customers. So I was in this quandary period of like, do I continue to drag race? I can't really afford two race cars. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do basically. And when I crashed that car, I think I had the two motors, or I was talking to my customer about it or whatever. I can't remember exactly. When that happened, I'm like, well, that's a sign from above. Time to quit drag racing and let's move on to something new. So I sold the car. I know it was kind of hard to sell it because that was my best friend's car in high school. I've been around that car for a number of years.
Yeah.
But it was just another stage in life. So
it is what it is. I mean, another door opens. So
right. Mm-hmm. And that was the car that when I moved to Georgia to get in the racing industry, the one I took with me, because I didn't have enough money or time or room or what have you to take everything I had with me. So the Roadrunner that I had back then, when I first went in the racing industry, I had to sell the Roadrunner. That's the one that I really missed that got away, basically, was that one. I had to sell that. I had decided, because the Roadrunner was kind of my street race car. At that point, I was like 22 years old, and I'm like, I need to get out of street racing and go to the track and do this legally. I'm just going to get in trouble. Right. And so I sold the Roadrunner, and I brought the Camaro with me to Georgia when I moved from Florida to Georgia to go work for Barry Grant.
So how old were you when you started with Barry Grant?
So I was 22, May of 1991.
Wow.
So,
that's the first thing that when I built my Cougar, with a stroker Cleveland in 98, I saved up and I said, that's what I want. I saw the stuff about Barry Grant in the magazines and all the pictures of the pump and the braided hose and all that. And I said, I got to have that. And I saved up. I think it was like, I ended up talking to Barry Grant, and it was like $900 or $980. And he gave it to me like at a discount for like $8 something, he gave me something that mattered. But I used that Barry Grant 280 system for probably 15 years and never had a lick of problems with it, and then I got into this brain thing where I started buying everything Barry Grant. Had to have all the fittings, and then the step down box, and then this, and which I still have all that stuff.
Yeah, my car had a BG 400 and a Stage 4 1050 on it. The whole time, yeah.
So you worked for Barry Grant for how long?
I worked for him about 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but he was my entry into the racing industry. And it's kind of interesting because so I was working at the auto parts store, and I was sending out resume. National Dragster at that point would have ads for all the racing companies, would put ads in there looking for salespeople. So in the early 1990s, they were all scrambling. It was growing. The industry was really hot, and they were all growing. Racing was hot, right? And they were always looking for people. And there would be ads almost every few weeks from some company. Okay. And I guarantee you, I sent my resume to just about every racing company that ever advertised in National Dragster for about like a year or so.
Wow.
And I think I sent it to Barry at least 2 or 3 times. Yeah, before he finally called me. And I remember
Really?
meeting him at Daytona. I met him at the Circle Track trade show that used to run at the Ocean Center in Daytona.
Okay.
So I met him there, and they were displaying there. And he's like, you need to come to the Gator. Are you coming to Gator Nationals next month? And I go, yeah, I am. And he says, I want you to meet my sales manager, Carl Bush. I said, all right, I'll be there. I'll go talk to him. He'll be just. So I went and talked to Carl, and Carl's like, both of them, it must have been interesting. They were like, invited me up to go to Georgia and check out the place and all that. And I went up there, and they offered me a job, and I ended up moving, packing what little I had and moving.
Wow. What was Barry Grant like? Was he personable? Was he short, or how was he like to talk to?
That's a good question. He was definitely into himself, really a lot, into what he's developed and all that.
Okay.
I always got along fine with him. I never had some people, not so much or what have you, but he and I learned a lot working for him. I definitely learned a lot. I mean about it as far as running businesses and all that.
Mm-hmm.
You could almost say he took it too far sometimes because he'd gamble. He put a lot of money into advertising when nobody else was. We advertised like a company that was 3 times the size of what we were. When we rolled into like the PRI show or the SEMA shows, we had these huge displays, and you thought we were like one of the biggest companies out there, and we weren't. So he kind of gambled a little bit on a lot of things, but they worked. Everything worked. And like, of course, when I went to work there, we were just starting out. It was a small company, maybe $1.5 million, maybe, somewhere around, maybe 2. I don't even think it was quite at 2 at that point. And Carl was the sales manager.
What products did they have at that time?
We had all the carburetors. We had the fuel pumps. The 400, I think, had just come out not too long because he had the 300 to begin with. That was the first high volume pump. And the 400 had just come out not too long before that. But we had all the we had like the Stage 3 750 was our big thing, which was the 750 ported and all that. Yep. And, that was the big thing. Of course, we had 850s and Dominators too and all that. And we did circle track, drag race, road race, all kinds of stuff. We did it all. But we're just starting out there, and Adam was the first sales guy to get hired, and I was the second one.
Okay.
And I remember, again, National Dragster coming out with an engine builder issue. And they had like 4 or 5 pages. It was called the engine builder issue, and they listed all different engine builders from all over the country that had whatever joined in on this deal. And I remember Carl calling me and Adam into the office and saying, you take half, you take the other half, you call these, and you set these guys up as distributors. And that's how we began Barry Grant and setting up distributors, and how we started growing the company. So you
just called these people up and said, you want to be a distributor for Barry Grant? This is what
right. Yeah. At 22 years old with no experience whatsoever, I was calling engine shops up and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And my only experience was from the Camaro and the Roadrunner, and but you learn. You talk to people running 8 and 9 second cars that you've never, and fast I made was 10, 20, but you learn from these people. I've never gone to school for anything in regards to automotive. Everything I've done has all been self-taught from when I started at 16. Self-taught on everything I've ever done on cars, building engines, what have you, selling parts, and also from my customers. My customers are the biggest source of my knowledge and information base. And I've dealt with people for many, many years. There's lots of people out there I've dealt with for 25 and 30 years in the industry, engine builders that I respect and all that I can call and say, hey, what do you think about this or that or what have you? And have helped me along the way. And I absorb all that information. So, so when somebody's calling me and asking me a question, it's coming from engine builders that I've talked to, not in this country, but other countries, and people from all over the world. And that their knowledge base, it's not just my knowledge, it's their knowledge base that I've kind of absorbed, basically. So
I can remember, like I said, in '98 when I bought stuff through Barry Grant. Mm-hmm. There really wasn't any real high-end carb. there was Holly, but there wasn't really anybody else. There was Carter, but I'm talking about somebody that had a custom high-performance carburetor. Barry Grant was it, man. They had that RS with interchangeable sleeves. I still got one. You know, it was like $8.25. The blue sleeves came with gold and whatever. I can't remember the colors.
Yeah, we came out with that because Holly was giving us so much hassle. They were trying to run us on pricing and stuff like that. And Barry decided he wanted to do his own carburetor. He wanted to get away from Holly which was kind of crazy for Holly to do that. They never made much sense because everything we bought, there was no warranty on.
Right. Right. They're going to buy parts from Holly.
We were only making their name better. It's just like, porting somebody's head,
Yeah.
Why does the head guy care if you go out and port his head and make it better? I don't understand it. But for whatever reason, the people that were running Holly had it against us, and they were trying to run things too much and trying to govern what we did. So Barry's like, again, Barry, he was a risk taker. He just jumped in there and says, let's build our own carburetor. And he had a lot of those ideas, and he was really smart that way. In developing things like that interchangeable Venturi thing and all that, and we came out with our own carburetor at that point. So which eventually evolved into the Demon.
Let me put this question up because it's tying in right what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I usually don't do this, but I think it's good for us right now to get this. So Fred Ebert says, was Barry the brain of the King Demon RS car?
Yes, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because what happened was, when was the lawsuit in that time? Because that's how I got my carburetor, was from Larry Morgan. Larry Morgan had all these carburetors. There was a lawsuit, is what I was told. And he didn't, like he said, they're not going to sell these carbs. If you want one, they're $250. And I'm like, yeah, I want one. So I got that RS with all that stuff for $250. Mm-hmm. So then they got sued somewhere in that time frame.
Right. We came out with the Claw series first. And it was Barry Grant's Claw series, right?
Yep.
And Holly sued us. They said it looked too much like their carburetor, used too many interchangeable things and all that. So they sued us. And we put it all on the line. And in a matter of months, turned the whole thing around and built the Demon series. And yeah, he didn't have the money to fight them really. So he had to basically settle with them. But that could have put us out of business, but we rebounded from it and came out with the Demon series. And they changed just enough stuff so that they would leave us alone.
Like the fuel bowl was different, it had a
different size. One of the things was that we had the same size fitting, so we had to change the size of the fitting so it'd be different. Certain things had to be different.
I knew that they were different because I'm like, well, these aren't the same as Holly.
That was all because of that lawsuit. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So, yeah.
Now, one of the guys on here, he said something pretty interesting, which I never knew this, but I'll just throw it up there while we're talking about it. Don Dodder says Holly did the same thing with Braswell and sued him too.
Yeah. They were bad about that. And Braswell was one of the original guys modifying carburetors. He was like even higher end than Barry Grant really back in the day.
Yeah.
He did the same thing, but he never really seemed to want to grow it. He wanted to keep his business, I think, more niche and small and all that. So, but yeah, very top quality carburetor guy. That's where pretty much everybody started to do that from Braswell's ideas. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now, were you there? Did he get involved with Nitrous Works?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Were you involved with that?
Yes, I was. Actually ended up being product manager for a few years for that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yeah,
who thought of that? Like, was it Barry Grant himself, or was it?
No, we bought out Ice Nitrous from the 80s. And in fact, I remember that when that happened, Bill Wheatley that worked for Ice who ended up working for CV Products.
Yes.
He came over and spent like a week or so at Barry and taught us all about nitrous. That's how we learned all about nitrous. And that's where Nitrous Works started. Was we bought out Ice, we took all their stuff and kind of rebranded it and changed it a little bit and updated it and stuff like that, and had our own nitrous program at that point. So,
I mean, really, he was, I don't know about genius, but he was like a marketing genius. I mean, the guy, he knew how to market a product, didn't he?
Right. A lot of money into advertising. Like I said, making the company bigger than what people thought it was and all that. Very smart in advertising. Learned everything I knew about advertising, basically, through him and the people he had working for him doing the advertising. So, yes. Mm-hmm. So there's a million stories out there about what happened. I've heard a million. I know he got into pro stock. He was kind of started because I remember seeing his cars. He'd be with pictures of him in the pro stock, his cars and his display, all that.
What do you think what happened to him? Did he just want to race, or what happened to Barry Grant?
Well, when I first went there, Barry was super focused on the company. I mean, I think when he first started, they kind of lived in a trailer or something. Yeah, in fact, I remember they lived in a trailer next to the shop.
Kidding.
Yeah. And it was all about the company and building the company and all that. Well, once, it was about, I guess that would have been what, 97, 98 when he was doing Pro Stock, probably around there, I think, when he got into it.
It has to be right around that, 98.
Yeah. By then, the program that we started with me and Adam calling all those engine builders and then the other people that we brought in along the way, we had Harry Miller came in and who ran a speed shop in Maryland. He ended up being really good with the warehouses and bringing the warehouses on because we had a lot of engine builders and stuff like that. Anyway, we had brought in a good crew of people and we were really hitting it on getting distributor programs and expanding the company. Well, this time the company's really hitting on all cylinders and growing. Well, Barry decides he wants to go pro stock racing. And he got so into pro stock that it's my feeling, and people may have different ideas, but it's my feeling that he got so into pro stock that he stopped, his focus wasn't on the company anymore. And part of that was, he didn't have to focus so much on the company because the people he had working were really good.
How much were you making then? From 2 million, where were you? You made 2 million when you first got there, 1 million to 2
I'd say we were probably, if I had to guess, I'd say 8 to 10, maybe somewhere in that range.
$8 to $10 million.
Yeah, maybe not quite 10, probably about 8 or so.
But either way, $8 million is pretty.
Yeah, we had grown it considerably. I mean, like 1994, 1995, the place just took off like a rocket because we had started, developing all these distributors, and the program was just rocking and rolling. We were attending race. We were always on the road. I was like once a month I was at a track somewhere, displaying or something like that. That was part of the job then. You were gone a lot. You were at races all the time. But yeah, it was rocking and rolling. And then he got into pro stock and that was it. At that point, it was all about pro stock. The company was there to support his pro stock habit. So, we kind of, and I think maybe it had something to do with the lawsuit too. I don't know. There's, his marriage ended, not too long after that too. Alita, who was originally the office lady that ran that place.
That was his wife?
That was his wife throughout the early mid-90s when I was working there, right?
Yeah.
She was rock solid. She had the books all good. Once they divorced and she was kind of out of the picture, he's into pro stock and all that. He's running around with a new girl and all that kind of stuff. She was quite hot-rodded, if you remember at the time.
Yeah.
So then it was all about pro stock and all that. And I saw him losing his focus, which is that and there was an inherent issue with the Demon and Claw carburetors, and that they had a lean transfer circuit. They wouldn't transfer right. Okay. There's easy ways around it, but I just remember beating my head against the wall. Like, guys, we got to do something about leans. Well, they ended up just making the idle richer to cover it up. But then you had everybody complaining about the idle being too fat.
Right.
And I basically burned out on the tech side of it because there was I could see him just doing too much of the pro stock stuff and always doing the same thing day in, day out, beat my head against the wall. It's like the transfer circuit's lean. Well, all it really, I mean, I'm sure they could have, there's something I don't know that they could have redesigned, but to fix it, what I would do to fix it was I would basically, because it's 4-corner idle, right?
Yep.
Well, basically I'd kill the idle circuit in the back. Richen up the primary circuit. So I'd either put a bigger idle feed restriction or go to a smaller air bleed in the front, make the front side richer, and then I would lean out the back side a lot. That way it would transition. So you got in the throttle, it would transition. Because once you got to the secondary side opening up, it was fine. It's just that initial transition. And I don't know why it was too lean. I'm not an engineer. I can't say that. I'm more like, I know how to fix things, So, but that was a problem. And that's why, of course, I wanted to be somebody in the industry too. I had illusions of grandeur of being somebody in the industry. So,
I get it.
So that's when I left.
Okay. So, there's a couple guys we'll put up here for comments because it kind of ties in what we're saying. Tim Hillier from Optimum Performance, who's had a speed shop for like 37 years or something. He said we had so many customers with Nitrous Works.
Oh, really?
Racing with it. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then Racer D, he says, I ran an 820 RS Demon on all my Engine Master engines. It was a fuel chiller with annual boosters. Nothing made more power. Nothing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And
no, they ran good as far as high end and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they ran good. Don't get me wrong. That it's just there were certain my little pet peeves, which most people can tune out. So, but yeah.
Now this one I didn't know this, but this looks like a fact here. It says 442 Snowman says blown money, Mike. The most
Not me. That's the more famous version of me. There's a Mike Knowles out there that runs Pro Mod.
Most beautiful car I've ever seen. I have photos somewhere. Okay.
Yeah. I actually got his T-shirt because he had a '68 Camaro at the same time I was racing my '68. Except for his was a lot more expensive than mine.
No way. Are you serious? Same name?
Yeah, but his name is Mike Knowles. He's out of. I've never met the guy. You know, I went up and bought his T-shirt at Atlanta Dragway one time, but he wasn't there or something. And I was racing my Camaro at that point, but he ran pro. I think he's still. I'm not sure if he's still out there or not, but he ran Pro Mod for a number of years. But he owns a trucking company out there, so he had a lot more money than I have.
Okay, well that was a good one. Thanks.
So, but yeah, sometimes people ask me that if I'm the same guy, but no, just the same name. I always say I'm the less famous version.
There it is. And Jeff Ott says, "Hey, I cleaned up part throttle loading with power valves in the front and back with a 950 Pro Systems car. So there's lots of ways to skin a cat."
Right.
David says, "I had BG when they were in Dalanga, build a Holly 390 to 450 for a Toyota 22R with an Offenhauser dual port, blah, blah, blah. With
that sounds like a cool project there.
Yeah, with a BG pressure regulator and nitrous work system." There you go, David. Thank you. So it's out there. A lot of guys on here. We got 90 people. That's pretty good.
It's interesting that it's still out there. All that stuff's still out there. You know, it's yeah.
You mean the products?
Yeah, the products. Yeah, there's still plenty of people using it and all that.
I mean, I think I have 4 or 5 280s and 400s, step down, all the fittings, mounting brackets. You know, Allstate Carburetor wants to buy it all. You've heard of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, they deal in a lot of the BG stuff, and they want to take it all.
Yeah, I think I was going to say Adam that I used to work with. I know he left and then he went back right before and worked for him for a few years before they closed down completely.
Yeah,
but he got all the companies that we used to buy stuff from, and he was selling fuel pump parts.
I remember that guy.
Yeah. I think Adam still does that. I'm pretty sure he does. So
is that Ninja Fuel Systems?
I don't know. I don't remember what name he used or what have you.
Back in the day, Yellow Bullet, he was on Yellow Bullet and a lot of
stuff.
It was called Ninja Fuel Systems.
But yeah, he had all that stuff for a while. I think he still does. He has access to so they can replace, fuel pump seals, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
His name's Adam Campbell. He's in Gainesville, Georgia. He's still there. So he has his own little shop there and all that. So my wife keeps in touch with him on Facebook. So
nice.
Yeah. Actually, there's a whole group of people that I still keep in touch with. For years and years, we get together when I still lived in Georgia.
Yeah.
We'd get together and for Super Bowl parties and stuff like that. After everybody left, we called ourselves the BG refugees. And there was a whole group of us that would get together for years and years. So, yeah.
And that sounds like a lot of, camaraderie with that.
There was, because all of us that we all moved to Georgia. It was in Dahlonega, Georgia, which is up in the mountains. Beautiful area. Yeah. When I moved there, it's only like 5,000 people there. It's real small town. There wasn't any kind of draw there for them to get people really. So everybody at first was from somewhere else. We were from all over the country. He'd bring people in from all over the country, and none of us had family there. So we all ended up hanging out and all that. And one of the warehouse guys would have parties at his house, and he actually lived 2 houses down from me because I bought my first house in Georgia, 1994, brand new house for $70,000.
Steal.
Yeah, but this is in Georgia. I had an acre of land, a creek behind the house, surrounded by trees. But Eric had a house 2 houses down, and he'd always have parties, and we'd have parties, and I'd walk down to Eric's, and everybody would gather there, and all that. So
So what happened to Barry? Didn't he die or something?
he died like a couple years ago. Yeah, he passed on. So
Okay.
yeah. Mhm.
R.I.P. Barry Grant. Left an impression on us all.
Yeah, I was gonna say I left on good terms with him. Was always on good terms with him.
Yeah.
And even over the last few years before he passed away, he'd pop up on my wife's Facebook every once in a while and ask her how we were doing and all that. So, so I really thank Barry Grant for giving my start, and you know, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. So, so thanks to him for that. You know, it was, and I learned a lot working for him. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was impressed when I ended up talking to him on the phone by somehow I got a hold of him. I don't know how.
Right.
And, he hooked me up. You know, I told him, you know, this is what I'm doing, and great guy. I never could say anything bad about him, you know.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I wish he hadn't lost his focus, because well, you could talk to any of the guys from Barry Grant. We felt we had the crew and all that we could have been the big player in the carburetor business. Let me say that.
Yeah.
Than somebody else, right?
Yep.
We would have been if he hadn't gone off on the pro stock deal. So
probably wouldn't. You'd probably still be around today.
Probably still. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
I like this. Somebody said, I spent time with Barry at PRI. And he said he was sick at the time. Such a loss, you know. Mm-hmm. So he might have been, maybe had cancer or something. I don't know. But thanks, Racer. So after that, so you finished it up with there. You left on good terms. So then what did you do? Did you have another job already ahead of time?
Yeah. So I lined up a deal with Keith Wilson, you know, does manifolds and all that.
Yeah.
And he was wanting to grow his company and all that. So I'm like, here, I got the formula. I'll take the formula down. You know, we'll set up distributors and all that. And he was developing the nitrous ProFlow deal, which is a whole nitrous. He had Brandon was working for him, and he had developed some nitrous plates, and they had angled holes. Everybody's plates were straight. All the holes, you know, the floats were not straight. Well, he had developed a deal that had angled holes, and they would angle into the runners. And so he had that. Of course, he had the manifolds. We had line of spacers and all that. So I moved down to Fort Lauderdale and went to work for him, and started the same formula I had from learning, you know, to start calling people. So I start calling my customers and saying, hey, I'm here now. And, you know, start selling our spacers and, you know, our nitrous kits were very high end. They were like 2 to 3 times the price. They were very high end. He had, you know, just the top of the line, you know, best of the best. And so we started doing that, and I started setting up distributors for him and all that. But, you know, I used my contacts from working with the ad people at Barry Grant to get the magazines to come in and do some stories and all that. But, you know, that
you
takes
knew the guys from the magazines, Carcraft and whatever.
Yeah. So that takes some time to get into. So, you know, so Keith, for where me and Keith just ended up not seeing eye to eye on things. So,
okay.
So
you rolled out of there.
What's that?
So you rolled out of there, moved on.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I've learned some really good things from Keith. I learned basically perfection from Keith, because everything from Keith had to be perfection. In your ads, even how you packaged because there he didn't have a shipping department. So you sold it and then you boxed it and shipped it. Okay. So even how I taped the box.
Come on, really?
Yeah, he was anal about all that stuff. How do you tape the box? I learned, you know, how to be like very critical of everything from him. And I learned a lot about aerodynamics. One of the smartest guys you'll ever meet as far as aerodynamics and airflow and stuff like that. But I don't think he really understood the business side of growing the company and using my formula, like, you know, having to give away product to the magazines and stuff like that. And so we just ended up not working together. So I left and moved back to Georgia.
Okay.
Didn't really like Fort Lauderdale that much. It was too hot down there.
What it is, man.
So I went back to Georgia, and at that point, I kind of just went on my own for a while. And I had one of my customers from Barry Grant that had a warehouse, a wholesale warehouse. But he was a real small guy, you know, had been there since the 60s, and he was looking to retire. and but he had this small WD warehouse. So we agreed that I'd work for him for a while and learn the business. So, and then I was going to move it to Atlanta and open a wholesale warehouse, kind of like a mini motor state, basically, right?
Okay.
So that's what I was going to do. So I started my little warehouse business, started calling all my customers, saying, hey, buy from me or what have you. I supplemented that. I did some rep work. I repped Al at Rev Valves a little bit, so I sold some valves. I hooked up with this German company who was doing valve springs, and I tried to bring them in to do valve springs. So I started going to the races and talking to the pro stock guys and the top fuel guys, and I got samples from all these guys and sent them over to Germany and said, here's the springs we need and all this kind of stuff. And, let's build these springs, and they want to come into this market. Well, it turned out they're used to building just small springs for overhead cam engines and stuff like that. Okay. They didn't have the machinery to build the big screens, the inch 6,450 springs that needed, right? And they decided they didn't want to invest the money. So they that didn't go anywhere. And then on the warehouse deal, I went to all the one time I did go to some school for something. Mostly I'm self-taught, but I did go to the SBA and went through a bunch of classes and all that. And the cool thing about that, it's really a neat thing you do if you ever want to start your own business, is they hook you up with a retired executive from some company,
What is that? Small Business Association?
Yeah,
SBA?
yeah.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So they hook you up with a retired executive who volunteers his time, and he coaches you basically. So the first thing you do is you come up with a business plan. That business plan covers everything from your building, your electricity, how much it's going to cost, what kind of profit you're going to make, and all this. And I spent probably, I don't know, a year or so developing a business plan that was probably 10 or 15 pages long.
Wow.
Of this company. But the problem was, at the bottom line, is I came up negative. So there was no money to be made.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, to this day, the wholesale industry of the racing industry, the wholesale side, is the most difficult side.
Okay.
Because the profit level is just not there. I mean, so for somebody to try to get in on a wholesale deal and become like the warehouse, that's why I think you've seen all those warehouses buy other smaller warehouses, and there's less of them out there, basically now, because they've all compounded into other warehouse. They've all been bought out by another, bigger one. It's a very difficult business to be in. But there was no money to be made in it, so I couldn't make it work. And so he ended up retiring. I think he sold all the inventory to Motor State. So needless to say, that didn't work out. But I for a few years there, I just kind of did my own thing and all that. And I was able to survive, but it wasn't getting anywhere really. I wasn't where I wanted to be. And so I hooked up with Competition Products out of Wisconsin, and they had already had a remote guy working for them, because I didn't want to move to Wisconsin, but they had already had remote guys working for them. So it was easy for me to hook up with them, stay in Georgia, and work from my home office, and that's when I went to work for them and all so forth. So sold engine kits and all that kind of stuff for Competition Products for a number of years. So.
They're still big today. They're out there today.
They're a great company. They sell a lot of engines. They buy from me now. I'm their rep at Diamond. So, and I know those guys well. I had it. I did well with them and all that. But that's the retail side of the business. That's the second hardest part about the racing industry, is the retail side, trying to make money and all that. So, having the right profit levels and all that. So.
Sure.
So,
how did you? So you went there from Competition. Then how did you get involved? Because wasn't Diamond an engine shop before they did Pistons?
Yes. So Diamond started in 1968 as an engine shop, and they were an engine shop until I think into the night. I don't know complete all the history of it, because it was obviously before my time. But they were an engine shop, I think, until the late 90s, early 2000s, something like that. They did start doing Pistons, I think, around the 80s or so, if I'm not mistaken. And they started with doing TRW raw forgings and modifying them and making them and all that. And they eventually started building their own Pistons. And then I think right around the turn of the century or so is when Bob Fox bought it. And most people know Diamond through Bob Fox. He bought the company because he had started Trend Performance, which does the push rods and the pins and all that. They do the pins for Diamond.
Yes.
He had worked for Diamond, I think, back in the 80s too, but he ended up starting Trend, and they came back and bought Diamond from the original owners. So and
Bob
he turned
Fox.
it into Bob Fox. Yeah.
Okay.
And he turned it into a complete custom piston, piston manufacturer at that point. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
What, so the machine shop aspect kind of was just gone. They don't do any machine work in regards to that.
No. That's been gone for a number of years. Yeah.
Okay.
So
when it comes down to pistons, I had someone mention that about Diamond pistons on a comment on here, that they're expensive and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Well,
yes.
You know what? You get what you pay for. You're not buying, some cheap TRW. So you're going to get quality. How do they start out? They have, someone also asked, do they make billet pistons? So
correct, we do.
Okay. So aluminum wise, what types, what do you have? Like there's 2618, there's 4032.
Right. 2618 is your main alloy you use for generally any kind of racing application or so forth. That's the main alloy. 4032 has a higher silicon content, which makes it it's not quite as, it makes it more brittle. It's
brittle, yeah.
Okay. 2618, contrary to what most people think, is actually soft. Well, it's soft so it can handle abuse. You can detonate the motor. It's not going to crack, as easy, right? So it's designed to be kind of soft, and it grows and all that. So you have to run more clearance and so forth. 4032 has more silicone, which makes it a little more brittle, but it doesn't grow as much. So it's good for like a pump gas car. So, like a 10-to-1 street car, you want to set up pistons for it. 4032 is excellent for that. Once you go to power adders and nitrous or high compression, you're usually going to 2618.
Okay.
And as far as billet and forgings, well, most pistons are made from forging, which is a kind of in a piston shape, basically.
Yep.
All right. So it's forged into a piston shape. But because we do so many different things, I mean, everything under the sun, you can't have forgings for everything that'll fit every combination out there. So we have what we call billet. So it's 2618, but it's just a round piece of billet. So you can just figure around, this tall, and this wide, or whatever. We got one really big one that's like 6 by 6, and we got smaller ones too. But you just cut them, that you can cut anything out of it, right?
Okay.
So, and we do billet for stuff where there isn't a forging available. We do the billet stuff. So, do a lot of antique engines, and I do a lot of weird stuff like that. Antique stuff like old Model Ts and straight 8s and things like that. And
what pistons are they going to use? Billet?
They use the billet because most of them are really tall on compression height and there's no forgings on them.
Got it.
Like, a lot of these old antique engines were 2.5, 3 inches of compression height. So there's no modern engine using anything that tall. So you make it out of billet. So, right. They're all big soup cans is what they are.
So the ones for that tank, that radial engine, that 9-cylinder radial engine you told me
I did the one for the Sherman tank this last year. Yeah. In fact, I think I'm going to be having another set. I just talked to them not too long ago. So, but we did a Sherman tank, 1940s Sherman tank.
Yeah.
And the original engines in them were aircraft 9-cylinder radial engine. And they sent me the sample. They were still using NOS pistons to rebuild these engines. That's a volunteer group out of Florida, and they do all kinds of recreation events. They do like a D-Day event up in Ohio, and they'll go to certain fairs and different things like that. And they'll set up like a mock battle, basically. They've got all kinds of stuff. They got German 88 millimeter guns and half tracks, and they'll set up the Germans on one side and Americans on the other. German tanks, and they'll fire real guns with blanks and stuff like that. So. But they blow up a motor every once in a while, and they sent me a sample, and we built a one-on-one recreation of the Sherman tank. It was big billet piece, type of deal. So it was really cool.
How big? Like how many grams does that thing weigh? Do you remember?
I don't remember the exact weight, but based on the size of it, I'd say it's probably 1,000 or more grams.
Okay, so just so I can put it in my head how big this is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, someone has a question.
It wasn't too much off of what some of our diesel stuff was, although it was thinner. It didn't need to be as thick as the diesel stuff.
So you do diesel stuff too?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Wow.
I got one right here.
Let me see that thing. Oh, yeah.
So
Now, what's that for?
This would be
Let me see that crown. Pick it up that way, Mike. I want to see the crown.
I think it's a Cummins, if I'm not mistaken. 4-valve, 24-valve.
Someone will comment. Someone says, "Oh, I know what that is."
Yeah.
Say about it.
I don't have a marking on it, but I believe that's what it is. But it's representative of a diesel engine. So
here's a question for you, Mike. It says, this is from Racer D. He says, Mike, does Diamond offer a billet piston? Well, we talked about that.
Right.
And what is your feeling versus forged pistons, grain flow problems?
So the billet piston isn't quite as strong. Everybody kind of thinks it might be stronger, but it's not. It's not quite as strong. But I don't think there's a lot of difference, so I don't really worry about it. You know, I like on that diesel stuff. I got one of my diesel guys that 150 pounds of boost, making 4,000 or 5,000 horsepower on a 6-cylinder. Yeah. I mean, we're talking serious power. He sent me a picture one time. What he would do on some of these engines, because a lot of times these aren't billet parts necessarily. He builds a lot of billet stuff for them. But he would actually make billet plates and put one on the top and one on the bottom of the engine and have 4 studs and basically tighten the studs on each 4 corners to try to keep the head on the block.
Wow. 150 pounds of boost?
150 pounds of boost, yeah. But he sent me a picture one time where one of those engines blew up and the head actually became like a grenade. The head is disintegrated. There's no head in this thing. The block's all cracked up. The rods and pistons are hanging out of it. But there, my Pistons are sitting there, right, hanging out of this thing, and they're all fine.
Really?
Everything disintegrated around it. But the Pistons are all, I mean, they might have been dented or whatever, but I mean, they were sitting there all in one piece still, hanging on the rods.
Wow.
So, you know, yes, technically, billet is not quite as strong as a forging, because forging has that extra press into that shape. But I don't really worry about it for most applications. So if you got to have a billet, you got to have a billet. You just don't want to say, I want it to be billet over a forging. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of one of those cases. If that's what you need to build what you're doing, then don't worry about it. So
perfect. Fred says Kazi is a big diamond.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Fire of diamond pistons.
Yep. One of my coworkers worked for me a long time with Barry Grant. Doug Schrieffer works for Kazi.
Oh yeah, I know Doug.
Yeah.
PRI.
Yeah, he worked for came in a year or two after me at Barry Grant's.
Okay.
So worked for him a lot longer than I did. So yeah, but he works for Kazi now.
At PRI, he told me he would have Kazi. He'd get John on here and we'd do a live chat. So I emailed him. So we'll see. That'd be pretty cool.
Well, if not, line up Doug.
Yeah. Sure.
You can tell Doug that I told you to line him up.
I'm going to
put him on the spot.
I'll email him back again because I haven't heard. So here's a good one here from Jeff. He says, is there power in 4032 if you don't have a durability issue from tighter ring clearance and less wobble upsetting ring seal in a engine?
Well,
as opposed to 2618, I guess.
I mean, they usually run about 1/1000th tighter. I don't know anybody that's really, none of the race car guys really use 4032. So, so it's not really something that I have a back-to-back on. But if you think about it if you're on the outside looking in, basically, you can run it a little bit tighter. It should be technically more stable. But once the motor's heated up and all that, does it really make a difference? I don't know. Maybe a drag car, you might see something because you're running it dead cold and so forth. But on a circle track making 30 laps, probably never going to see any difference. But nobody really uses a 4032 for any high-end racing stuff because they want the durability of the 2618. But that's a good question. So it'd be nice if you could come up with I don't know, a specialty alloy maybe where you could have the tightness of the 4032, but have the durability and all that. So, but
the thing I think about is it comes down to this cost.
Well, we don't charge any difference between the two alloys.
Okay. I wondered if there was a big cost difference.
No, we don't. At the forging level, when we buy them, maybe there's $1 or $2 or something like that. But
it's not like $100 difference.
No. You know, some companies I think do charge less for 4032 because they consider it not to be of the quality sometimes. Right. The 2618, they think it's a lower quality, but I tell people it's not really a lower quality part. It's just whatever is the right part for you. So as far as diamond goes, we're going to machine them the same way to the same, you know, technical specs and so forth and preciseness, regardless of the alloy. So
perfect. BRR Racing, good to see you the other night when I saw you on Andy's channel. Thank you. He says, Diamond did a beautiful job making custom 2618 forged pistons for my 1970 TA Ram Air 4. Nice. Actually, very affordable until you check off the option boxes like I did. Button design.
Well, you got to check off some of the options.
Right. It's just like getting a car.
But, you know, it's racing. Nothing's really affordable in racing. And the prices have gone up, you know, over the last years, just like everybody else's, you know. I bitch about what it costs for me to go get a slice of pizza around the corner, you know. So
that's good.
So
they do make beautiful pistons, man. When you see them, pictures of them, and they're like, I don't even want to get this thing dirty. They look so nice.
Right. Well, that, you know, and Diamond is on the high end. I tell people this. I have a guy email me the other day. He says, I'm looking for an affordable set of pistons, and he's got all these specs listed and all that. I said before I even get into this, Diamond is a top shelf, high-end custom piston manufacturer. We build the best of the best. So I'm not really going to be in the cheaper price range. So, or the less expensive price range, we should say, you know, I'm going to be on the higher end of it because that's what we do. We do a lot of machining. We do really nice radiuses on the valve pockets, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You'll see some of the more inexpensive stuff. You'll look at the valve pockets and they got sharp edges.
Right.
You look underneath the piston, they're as forged. You'll see a lot more machining on ours underneath, stuff like that. There's a higher degree of time spent machining our parts compared to some of the more inexpensive pistons. Okay. That doesn't mean those pistons are bad for somebody else or anything like that. I mean, it's just where you want to be and, you know, and all in your racing program, you know, what you want to put in your engine. So, but we are definitely the high end. So.
Buy the best
part. I like that because to me, being to me, at least in my own stuff, I want the best in my engine. I want to be sure that I make it to the end of the track without my motor coming apart. Especially with the things I've learned about stupid things like not changing my tie rod sleeves.
There's a fact right there, Michael.
Yeah.
And he also wants to say this. He said it was a pleasant experience working with Diamond Pistons. Gave my custom specs required. Went to engineering department to review and slight revision. Was approved. Won exactly 13.5-1, 67 cc, and they took care of it. So thanks for that experience.
Well, that's the thing. Another thing I'd like to say is I think all of us at Diamond are very anal, you could almost say, about getting all the specs right. So we are very precise because people will call up, oh, I want 13 and a half. I'm like, well, which one do you want? Because I'm going to make it exact. If you give me the exact numbers, it's going to be right at 13.5-1. And I have to drag information out of people sometimes because they'll say, oh, it's just stock. What's stock to you? Or, you know, I have to I really push people a lot on making sure they check everything. You know, I mean, even if you call me up with a 350 Chevy, I'm still going to ask you, well, is it going to be 4030 bore or 4040 bore? And does it have a 3848 stroke or does it have a 350 stroke? Because they have both. Is it a 5.7 rod or a 6-inch rod?
Yeah.
I'm not going to listen to you when you tell me stop. I'm going to make sure you verify it has all these things in it. So even the simplest engines, I'm going to make you verify it. And some people might get irritated, but I always make sure I'm asking these questions. Valve sizes is another one. People call up, I got this cylinder head. Well, what's the valve size? I said, oh, whatever it comes with. Okay. I said, you know, I always tell people, I said, are you sure it's got what it came with? Because so many people change this stuff.
Of course they do.
Said, if you guess at it, you'll be the one guy that guessed at it, and then somebody changed it. Like you got a big block Chevy head, and you think it's got a 2.300 valve. And you're like, oh, it comes with a 2.300 valve, and I built it for 2.300. Now it turns out somebody put a 2.350 in it. and now your pocket's too small. Who's to blame?
Exactly.
So,
Well, they're going to call and blame you, of course.
yeah. So it's like, go measure your valves. I'll sit and hold on you. You go measure your valves.
Yeah.
Stuff. And I have to get engine builders to do this. That's people that don't really know. I understand, but there's even engine builders I have to get after. You go measure that. Go CC that head. So
what's it take time-wise to do a custom order piston? With pretty much the same, the right information. Is it a 10-minute process, 20 minutes, half hour?
It can be as quick as 10. If a guy fills out his sheet, it can be as quick as a 10-minute operation or less. But nobody fills out the sheet.
Yeah, no, I get it.
They call and we go back and forth. So it can be, I'd say on average, half hour, 45 minutes. It can be easy. So,
but it's not unusual for someone to I got to go check that. I'll call you back. Then they call you back. Oh, you need this. Okay, I got to call. It's not unusual to have 3 or 4 calls in one order.
Not unusual at all, going back and forth, or me just sitting there. If they're in the shop right there, they'll CC the head while I'm going over the rest of the information. So,
okay.
So I do it a lot. Yeah. So,
wow.
So yeah, and if you ever wonder why, I'm going to bring this up because this is one of the complaints we always get is it takes so long to get a hold of somebody, or you didn't return my call and stuff like that, Well, that's because we are wide open all the time. And custom engine doing pistons for custom engines is a very intricate process. Everything's really important down to the thousands, right? So you got to take the time to spend with people, and you got to figure out combinations, because a lot of guys are trying to build big power and all that. What should they build? What they shouldn't build? So it takes time, and we're on the phone all day long. I'm answering emails all day long. We are wide open as soon as I log in the morning till I quit. It's just constant. Especially this time of year, I don't slow down at all.
Oh yeah.
So if somebody wonders why, maybe I always tell people I'm the best of the industry at returning calls. I've always been the best of the industry. Nobody beats me. But Diamond challenges me on that because we have so much volume, and because it's so intricate, the amount of time it takes to get things precise, so that people get exactly what they want. So.
Well, you just put your name on the line saying that, Mike, when you said you're the best in the industry, right?
Yeah, I tell people,
you heard it, boys.
I'm the best in the industry at getting back to you, but that doesn't mean it isn't going to take a few hours, or if it's later on in the day and I still got 30 more emails to answer, that it might not be till tomorrow, but I'm back to you at some point.
Okay. How many pistons do you sell, like sets do you sell in a day, or how do they average or rough? 5, 10?
It varies. Because again, it depends on how much time you have. I can't take, some days you can't take all the orders that are coming in.
Right.
And then some orders, you can get a big order from one of your distributors. So, you could, I could put in a 50 piston order, from one of my distributors, or I could be working on customs that take 45 minutes an hour, and maybe you only do 5 or 6 of them that day.
Got it. Okay.
So every day is something different. So that's a hard question to answer because it's so variable. And we mostly do customs, but we do a lot of shelf stuff too.
That's what I wondered. Do you have shelf pistons for
we have a decent lineup. When I first went to work for Diamond, we were probably, I'd say 90% custom, 10% shelf. And now we're probably more like, say 50, 60, probably 60, maybe 60, a little bit above custom and the rest shelf. So the numbers have reversed a little bit. But we do a lot of shelf stuff, but then we do a lot of customization on the shelf stuff. We have we innovated the Change the Shelf program, which is a deal like, let's say you want to order a shelf part, right? And let's say it's a big lot Chevy at 4600 bore, but you're replacing a set of pistons, and now you got to hone it to 4602, right? Well, you got a shelf part that works fine for you. You just need it 2,000s bigger. Well, we have a Change the Shelf. We'll build it in that custom bore size.
Got it.
It's not priced as a full custom, but you can have that custom bore size, right? Or if you deck the block and now you need, instead of 1,250 compression height, now you need it at 1,240. We'll build it 10,000 slower for you. We call that Change the Shelf. It's like an extra $10 a piston. And
great.
it's not, to the price of a custom, but it just allows that extra engineering time to make that slight change to it. And everybody does it now pretty much. But we innovated that years ago. We started that, and then of course everybody else picked up on it. So, and we do a lot of that too. So that can be easier than a full custom because you're just one little thing or something like that. But so.
Wow, I like hearing that. Okay. Here's one for you. This is kind of interesting. Vintage Adventure Drive says, I think this kid's name is Turner.
Yeah.
And he says, I'm most interested in high compression 225 slant 6 pistons. You got them?
I've done some 225 slant 6s. I can't remember. I think the last one I did was a blower or supercharger, turbo, something like that. I don't remember. We can certainly do a high compression one. In Diamond's history, because it's been around, people always ask me, have you done this before? Have you done that before? And I'm like, most likely, but we've done so many Pistons for so many years. And so, yes, no problem at all. We can do one. I can't tell you right offhand what the max compression might be, but I can certainly, we can do up a sheet and send it to engineering and figure that out. But we can definitely do a high compression one for that. Okay. That'd be a cool thing to do with one of those too. So
let me put this up while we were talking on Turner's question. And he says, I have no knowledge of custom pistons. What all information about engine combination would you need to get a well-fitting custom piston? So the information.
So this is one of those interesting questions because I get that a lot. I like fill out the sheet and I'll quote it, and when people come back, well, I don't understand what the sheet says. All right. So I tell them, I said, just fill out the engine portion of the sheet. You don't have to fill out the design portion where it talks about piston thickness or where to put the top ring, but you got to come up with the engine part of it. The bore size, the stroke, the deck height. You got to get with your machinist or whoever's doing the block and measure these things. You can look up the cylinder head CC on the internet if you want, but why not CC it and know for sure? Because all these heads and stuff are all over the map. At least they were back in the day. So deck heights, they're all over too, so figure out what head gasket you're going to use. All the details, what rod length, because like small block Chevy, came with 5.7 rods, but everybody uses 6-inch rods, right? So, but some people even use longer rods, and then recently the trend is for like the power adder guys, the nitrous blower guys, to use a 5.850 rod so they can build a stronger part. So, you've got to know those basics. And from there, it's just a conversation. What do you want to do? What are you looking to do? What's the application and so forth. But once you've given me the details on the engine, the stuff I wouldn't know because I'm not sitting there with your block and your cylinder heads, right? If you give me that information, the rest of it is just a conversation about what you're looking to do. And, you can take my recommendations. If I might not give you my recommendations right off thinking that you're going to tell me what you want. But if you say, hey, I don't know what to do here, what do you think? Then I'm more than willing to get, step in. Right. I don't want to step in on somebody that already knows exactly what they want and doesn't want to hear about it from me.
Okay.
And there are people that know exactly what they want. They don't need my opinion. They've been around the block and they want this, and this. And it's like, all right, yes, sir. And you keep on going, right? There's other people like they know a little bit and they want this much. And they're like, well, what do you think about this? Then I'll jump right in and help you out. It's really pretty simple if you look at it that way. And I do invite people to educate themselves on these things. Like you ask people what their compression height is, and they don't even know what it means. Compression height is the height of the piston, which has to do with the stroke, the rod length to position the piston. Now, every time I ask compression height, I get this, well, I want 12-1. I said, didn't ask compression ratio. I asked compression height. He says, well, I don't know. They don't even know what that is. I was like, educate yourself on some of if you're going to call, educate yourself on some basic engine information and all that. It just helps you understand what to ask because most of the time when you're calling somebody like me or any of the other guys and all that, we kind of assume you know the basics, right? And you may or may not know the basics, and we're happy to help you learn those things. But, you know, unless you come out and say it, then I don't know to say, you know, to educate you, you know.
Yep, makes sense.
So happy to help anybody out as much as I can. I'm figuring things out and all that. Just got to ask the questions, but I do invite them to learn about what they're building, not just assume that everybody out there has the answer for what they're doing, you know, to learn some of the basics about their engines and the you know, this buzzwords like compression height, what it actually means and stuff like that. How to figure compression ratio. You know, I'm like, if people call up all the time, he says, I got this piston, what's the compression ratio on it? Well, it depends on, you know, the cylinder head CC and the head gasket, deck height, and all that. And it's like, nobody ever has that information. You know, well, you can't, you know, you should know these things or be able to go talk to your machinist and find those things and understand that, you know, those are important things for me to know. And I don't really like guessing at it.
Good idea.
You know, there's a lot of people, I had this engine, I just build it stock. You know, if you were talking about a motor from the 60s, you know, like a big block Chevy, small block Chevy, you know, or even any of them, a lot of them are rated at 11-1, but none of them were 11-1. They're all 10 and a half. They really weren't 11-1 from the factory, even though they all rated about that.
Right.
You know,
yep.
I know for a fact, you know, like I have a 1970 Barracuda. When I rebuilt that engine, I measured it all out, set the deck height and all that. But that block had been decked, and I decked it again, and it's still taller than the blueprint spec from Mopar.
Really?
Yeah. That block was tall. I mean, I just had it skimmed, so that's only a few thousandths. But it's still about, I don't remember what it was, maybe 5 or 10 thousandths, still tall, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
So, I mean, these things happened back then, you know? So you can't, that's why I tell people you can't really go by stock. Stock to me is a bad word, you know?
Okay.
I don't want to hear that. And the other one I hate is really people try to order pistons by oversize. Well, I need it 30 over. Well, 30 over from what? I had a warehouse calling the other day. I need this piston 60 over. Well, I think it was a small block Chevy, you know, like a 400 motor. So it would originally be 4125 bore, right? And he wanted it 60 over, but the piston he was replacing was already 4155 or something, right?
Okay.
So I'm like, all right, so which one do you want? Do you want it 60 over from 4125 from the original 4185? Or do you want it 60 over from the 4155? And I told him, I said, don't ever go by oversize. Find out the true hone bore size. I tell you, anybody, if you go by oversize, at some point somebody's going to end up with the wrong set of pistons. Just because somebody's going to assume somebody knew what they were talking about instead of actually talking about the true final bore size. So that's another important thing is, you know, order by true final bore size.
I mean, you got to have good data in to get good data out.
Right.
Common sense, you know.
And I try not to assume anything. And again, I know there's a guy on the phone. I said, don't, you know, I wasn't a couple of weeks. I said, don't get mad at me that I'm asking you all these questions. And it was a big block Chevy with a closed chamber head. But closed chamber heads range from 96 to 106 cc. You know, a big block Chevy, you know, back in the 60s, they had a wide range. I said, you need to go measure your cylinder head. Because he's just like, I just need a piston for my 427 in my Corvette. And I'm like, well, no, he already had an open chamber set of pistons that didn't fit. I'm like, closed chamber I know what that means. You're talking to somebody that knows what a closed chamber is. We're covered. Now I just need to know the specs on it to get you exactly what you want. And I could almost tell the guy was getting a little frustrated because he's like, oh, why is this so hard? Well, it's, you know, and it's because, well, I want exact specs because I want that piston.
Head, buddy.
You want 10.5. I want it to be 10.5 for you. I don't want it to be 11-1 or 10-1. You want 10.5. I want it to be 10. And if you tell me all this stuff, it'll be there. So go back to the machine shop and figure it out. It's not that hard. So
here's a good one here. Racer D says, I remember in the 70s when Manley offered pistons with undersize with ring lands because the piston rings were so poor we had to hand lap all the rings flat. The ring manufacturers have fixed that now.
I still get some old jobs where we've cut them tight on the ring lands. And I have to warn people when they're ordering pistons, do you want it cut this tight? Because some engine builders still hand lap their rings.
Okay.
Very, very rarely today, but
Yep.
you find it sometimes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. RW82 says exactly 100% diamond makes badass pistons. You pay for the quality. Love the pistons for my 430 Windsor that made 716 horse stuffing the Trick Flow Twisted Wedge R series heads.
Cool. Well, good. Glad to hear it.
Joel DeBose, I don't know if you know him. He works for Pat Musey, does all the head work for them. Joel says, can you talk about the difference of older pistons versus like a box piston when application requires one or the other?
That's a good one.
So
you have what he's calling a box piston.
Yep.
Is like this. It's what I call an inboard forging.
Pull it back, Mike, so we can. Okay.
See, I call it an inboard forging. And it's because everything kind of angles in and it uses a shorter pin.
Okay.
Right? Compared to a regular forging where everything is more going out, basically. Right?
Can you hold them together? Now I can see what you're talking about. Box on your left hand.
Yeah. See, he's got the braces and everything kind of goes in.
Yeah.
And this uses like a 2 1/4 pin.
Yep.
And this would use like a regular forging would use anywhere from 2 1/2 to a 750 to 950, depending on the application.
Okay.
This is what they call the newer style inboard type forging.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks it's the rage, but it's not necessarily.
Why?
So an inboard forging, it can make more power. See, it has less skirt area, right? Less skirt area, less friction, right?
Yep.
Makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
It's got the braces to make it nice and strong.
Let me get rid of his question. Okay.
But they have a tendency to grow more. So they can be a little more finicky.
But are they still made out of like 2618?
Same alloy.
So they grow more because of what? The skirt design?
The skirt design and all that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So they usually run a little looser. So I use the inboard forgings. I use a lot on drag cars. Less friction, make more power.
Yep.
They're not quite as stable. Okay. And once they get heated and sealed up, they're all right, but they're not quite as stable to begin with. But once they are at power and all so forth, they're fine. And they do make a little bit more power, but because they're run a little bit looser and they tend to wear a little bit faster. So it depends on the application. Usually in like a turbo, nitrous, boosted car, you prefer to use what we call a full round piston. Like a really heavy horsepower, because this one's a full round.
Okay.
And it's got the big, thick ridge below all the way around. Full round is full round. All right. Let's just talk about that for a minute. There's this full round, right?
You want to compare it to now.
Yeah. And then this is what we call super rib. This has got a more rounded rib.
Yep. Right? I see that. Yep.
And then here, this is what we call a rib side. So it's got a straight rib. Okay.
Okay.
So you got straight rib, super rib, a little more round, and full round, right?
Got it.
So obviously, if you're going full round, it's adding weight. So you don't necessarily want that on your naturally aspirated engine.
Okay.
But it offers a lot of stability and strength on a blower engine, big power blower engine. So I sell the full rounds and big power blower engine, except for we have our LS2K pistons, which is an inboard. This is actually our big power adder LS inboard. And what we've done is we've added a bunch of bracing in here. So you take an inboard that you wouldn't necessarily normally use in that application, but we've really braced it up and made this super strong forging. And the reason why we do that is because LSs have the reluctor clearance problem.
Okay.
So we've made this super strong forging and it'll clear the reluctor and all that. But if you got like a big block Chevy or what have you, or a small block Ford doesn't have the reluctor problem, I'll lean towards the full round piston for more stability and strength. Okay. Some of the circle track guys use the inboard forging, some of the real high end, But I've had a few of my engine builders that stick them because they run so hot on speedways, stuff like that. They run them so hard and hot that they actually stick them. They'll actually start to grab. And those engine builders I've taken back to regular forgings, and they have better success with the regular forgings. There other engine builders make them work. It's you can't really tell somebody that they can't make something work, because then they will, right? So for some, I have one engine builder does sprint car motors that does both. He'll do the inboard forging for his guys that I'm sure are probably easier on the engines. And, if any of the engine builder guys will know this when they're customers, some of their customers, the engines come in, they rebuild them. They just need minor work. They're really taken care of and maintained. And the other ones come in and they're about falling apart, right?
Sure.
So he does inboards for the guys that he feels can tune it right and make it work. And he does regulars for the guys that are maybe a little more rougher on their engines. So it has to do with that. There's different things that you'd use an inboard on and maybe you wouldn't. I like drag cars, not a big problem. They don't build a lot of heat. But anything builds a lot of heat, like circle track cars run speedway style stuff. Some of the pull truck guys, on the pull truck, those guys, the inboards, I've had some people stick them on inboards on the pull truck guys too. And I've flipped them back to regular forgings and they do well. But other guys do just fine with them. So I always tell people, if you have experience with it and it works good for you, go for it. But if you don't and you're a little worried about it, go with the regular forging. Now the flip side of that is for the 2K piston here, because we have awesome success with this. With the LSs, with 1,500, 1,800 horsepower, what have you. It works fine on those guys. For whatever reason, they do just fine with the inboards. So
it's beautiful, man. I love the thing.
But that's kind of the difference between the different forgings. So,
what's that weigh in your hand, that one you just had? What's that about?
About 500 grams.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty thick and heavy on this one. So it's specially designed for that application on an inboard. Most of your inboards aren't necessarily designed. Most of the ones I do build, other than these, for like custom pistons, are for higher RPM, naturally aspirated drag cars, stuff like that. I do a lot of the inboards for stuff like that.
Okay. So. Dr. Ron Burgess says, my engine builder designed the custom dome and Diamond built the piston 15-1. Took a while to get them, but they're marvelous. And I've seen them before. They are like works of art. Thanks, Doc. Raging Bull says, is it worth it to have piston shape that mimics the chamber over a standard flat top or dish in a street application, making 500 to 550? Well,
generally a flat top is considered the most efficient for flame travel in my experience.
Right.
But I don't really, in that horsepower motor, I wouldn't really worry about it anyway. If you got to build a dome to get the compression you want, that's going to be more important than. And when you do a dome, you do want it to kind of mimic the chamber to some degree. Yes. As far as a dish piston, lots of people want to talk about the dish design. So, because in dishes, there are what we call a full round. See, that's a full round, right?
Yep.
I don't think I have another dish around here. Do I? No. All right. So there's a full round, and then there's what we call a D dish, which would mean this would have a flat deck right here, right?
Okay.
And of course, inverted dome, which would have the flat deck here, and then a flat deck on the back that mimics the head. Okay. Those are your three different dishes. That can make a difference for people. Generally, full round on a blower supercharger engine, it doesn't matter whether you have a deck or not. It can be open like this. It doesn't really seem to matter on something like 30, 40 pounds of boost. Where I do see the D dish helping out, or the inverted, is on like a street car. You want to run a tighter clinch for efficiency.
Okay.
Yeah. Then it definitely helps having that flat area there. And can make it more efficient. So, and I will do it on some of the blower cars that are driving on the street, and they want to be able to drive, kind of out of boost and in boost and all that. Then I don't mind having a flat de-dished at that point. Again, for the same reason, when they're off of the boost, having that efficiency there on the quench pad. So
you'll see most of these cars that are running any kind of dish are going to be a power adder car.
A lot of it is at that point. If it's got a bunch of boost on it, it usually doesn't. You don't really see that much. You don't see not like in a naturally aspirated engine. So I remember one of the engines I built for a buddy of mine. It was a 427 big block. And I set it up really tight on quench. And I told him, I said, we can make this run off of 87 gas, but still make good power. And I set it up with a small chamber head. We used an Edelbrock head that was only like 100 cc.
Okay.
And we used a flat top piston in it. And I ran it at like 35 thousandths piston to head clearance.
Yeah.
I said, we're not putting a big camshaft in it, so you're not going to turn it. So we keep it real tight like that. And it'll run on less octane, but still make good power, run really efficiently. And that's what people are talking about, quench pads and all that. So that can get really important on naturally aspirated motors, running that tight. As long as you're not turning a lot of RPM, you can run them really tight like that. And it'll make a lot more power and require less octane that way.
Okay.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm. I built a number of street motors. I built another one, cast iron headed big block at 10.8 to 1. Now, that one wasn't going to run on 87, but it ran on regular pump gas, no problem.
93 or something.
Yeah, right. Because I set it up tight, even though it was a cast iron head, obviously a lot of heat, but I did the same thing on that one, and it ran really good too. So,
what do you see for experience in, like, people always ask, what's the most compression you can put on the street? Saying that you got a scenario of aluminum head versus.
That goes back to that same thing I was talking about with quench.
Yep.
Fortunately, one of the things is we are wide open all the time. You could get into a long discussion with somebody over theories and all that. So as a general rule, I just tell people 10 and a half for pump gas stuff. And that just covers them, Sure, there's people out there to tell you they can get 12 to 1 and make it work. But you really got to know what you're doing. You got to have the camshaft timing perfect. You got to have that quench really tight and all that. It also depends on the burn rate of the cylinder head. You got an old big block Chevy head, it's going to be a lot harder than an LS because the LS is so much more efficient. Most of the LS motors are 11 or 12. The direct injection they're all up there anyway. So it's real easy to make say a modern LS run at 11 and a half, but compared to an old engine. So you got all that in play and all that. But as a general rule, I just play it safe. Because I don't know who I'm talking to. I don't know if I'm talking to somebody that understands, lobe separation and how that plays into it, running a little wider lobe separation so it doesn't have as much cylinder pressure and overlap and all that kind of stuff. And I really don't have as much time as I'd like to spend 2 hours on it with a guy going over all that stuff, I mean, I wish I had that kind of time, but I don't. So I have to think about who I'm mainly selling to and just be conservative. So that's why I just say that 10 and a half. Of course, an LS motor, I might say, 11 and a half, but it just depends on what it is. So
have you ever heard this one? Has anyone ever told you their engine has a 3/4 can?
Yeah. That's from back in the day. Yeah. Me and you know that. Yeah. That was a term that was coined in the 70s, I think.
Yeah, probably in the later 60s. Yeah.
Really? Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they always, I always thought it was, 750 thousandths lift. That's kind of where I always played it as, that's what that meant. But there's a million different.
Yeah, it was all from back in the day. Yeah, that meant you had a pretty big camshaft in your motor, basically. That it was more race and street oriented.
Exactly. Now this is kind of interesting. This guy complains. He says this is BR Racing. Only complaint, nothing to do with Diamond, is Trend DLC wrist pins are impossible to buy sometimes, as was in my case.
Yeah, I agree.
True. Okay. Do they supply the wrist pins for you guys?
If they have them on the shelf, it's not a problem. If they don't, it takes time to get it done.
Okay.
So sometimes it can be that way, unfortunately, and that's just because business is growing and there's just trying to keep up. So, unfortunately. Yeah. Sometimes I have to, some customers I end up having to have them just sell them uncoated and have them get them coated themselves if they don't want to wait.
Okay.
if the pins are on stock, it's usually about 4 to 6 weeks for them to get coated. So it does take some time, and Trend has to do things economically, I'm sure. So it's not like they're going to box your pens today and send them to get coated, because they don't do it in house, right? And then box another the next day. I'm sure they wait till they have a certain amount and all that. It has to make sense business wise too. So, I'm sorry that sometimes happens, but it's one of those things where some people, you can't wait. You can't wait. I understand it,
So Brian, Bob Fox, he started Trend.
Right.
And he started Diamond, or took over Diamond.
He bought Diamond. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Trend supplies all the
Trend does push rods and a bunch of other engine hardware parts and pins. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Who does all your rings?
All the racy type stuff rings comes from Total Seal.
Total Seal. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. We do like regular 16 stuff that comes from Hastings. A lot of the more modern rings, for like the our streetcar LS stuff, a lot of the import stuff, those rings come from NPR. NPR is a company that supplies OEM rings for the Japanese engines. Okay. So they're super high quality Japanese, because it's different from other imported stuff. Japanese is always top shelf. But they're an OEM supplier, so a lot of the more modern stuff comes from them. But anything I special order, like 43s and 0.9s and all that kind of stuff, that all comes from Total Seal. We're very tight with Total Seal. I have emails daily going to my buddy Kevin at Total Seal, and I just order, I send them the bore size, the ring size, the radials I want. Radial depth's real important anymore, because those numbers change. So you can't just ask somebody what their ring size is anymore. You got to know the radial depth, because there's always there's so many different things available today. It's not like you can just order a 43 ring. 43 rings are 170. The top rings are 173. There's some that are 155. There's some that are 134. And of course, you can have them cut them to anything you want. So you got to know all these numbers.
Exactly.
A lot of people order rings from me because they don't want to bother figuring it all out. Like, I'll let you get the ring. You figure out all that radial stuff.
You know what? I agree 100%,
So when I get a quote back from Kevin at Total Steel, he's got the radials on me, so I can match that up and make sure I'm cutting the piston right and all that. It's one of those things that I do behind the scenes that you don't know that I do for you. So,
wow. Here's another question. For best power, which is better, assuming compression ratio? Big chamber, big dome, or minimum chamber and disc piston?
Well, that's a hard question to answer.
I know,
really, because it would depend on but if you look at, I'll put it this way: if you look at the high end, really super high end heads that are making big power for the most part, this would be naturally aspirated. They're all small chamber. Okay, you look at any flat angled head, SB2 head, they're like 30, 40 cc range for small block Chevy. Big block Chevy 12 degrees are like 60, 70 cc. Yep. They're all small chambered. So I would say the small chamber, whether that end up being a dish or a flat top, all depends on the combination. So that's for most of the things. Now, when you go back, if you could flip back to like a blower engine, a Hemi, those are all big chambers and big domes. So we got a Hemi right here. See, big chamber, big dome, right?
Nice, baby.
And this isn't a real huge dome, but that's but anyway, and obviously those make lots of power too. In a Hemi style, that's a Hemi style chamber, so it's always naturally bigger and going to have a dome in it. So like with a street Hemi,
Hemis are hard to get compression.
Mm-hmm.
It's the story that you hear.
Right.
What's a high compression for a Hemi that you would deal with? Like for I mean, you're talking 13 to 1.
With the right combination, you can get 13, 14 to 1. Usually getting much higher than that, like on say like an old classic 426 Hemi, is very, very difficult.
You're right.
Because also you're going up, you got to have room for your pockets.
Yep.
Right. You got to have room for those. And of course, what are you doing when you're running 14 to 1? You're running big camshaft, right? So you probably need deeper pockets. So your only place to grow the dome is right there in the middle.
Okay.
So so it can be real hard to build like a classic 426 is, to build something like 15 to 1 or something like that. You probably never get there. But the same thing goes for a big block Chevy too. You take a classic 454 big block Chevy, it's hard to get more than 13 to 1 out of them.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Out of a conventional 119 chamber head.
Yep, I could dig it.
Let me qualify that because there's
no.
Not saying it's not depends on how deep your pockets are,
yeah,
how much you machine the head. But if you try to put one together with a 119 chamber and a big dome, it's very difficult to get it if you got any kind of decent pockets. My old 427 in my Camaro, it was 13 to 1. That was maxed out dome. If I didn't have that spark plug indexed right, it'd crush it.
Yeah.
So
okay.
It was as big as dome I could put in there, So because I was trying to build, but that was as much as you could get out of a 427 was 13 with a conventional head. So some motors are challenged like that. Of course, we do that all the time. All the time, people want to do max domes, and sometimes I think people go too far on that. That they because you can get so much dome in there, it can actually impede flame travel.
Sure. Well, yeah.
And then you got to start putting a trowel through their fire slot basically sometimes, and you're like, how tall is that? And and it's always a judgment call. I can't tell you the exact point where it's going to start losing power, but sometimes on some of these combinations, let's say I'm trying to do a 15 to 1 big block Chevy, and it's like sometimes you wonder, is that going to run better with that big dome at 15 to 1, or is it going to run better at 14 to 1 with a little bit less dome? And of course, that's always on the customer, really. Like how much does he want to get into developing his engine? Does he want to try 2 different things and see, does he have that kind of budget to develop that engine? But there's sometimes I'll be thinking that in the back of my head, and I might, if I feel confident enough with the person talking to him, I might mention it. Or are you thinking you might be getting too high on that? It seems like this is going to be a really peaky dome, and it might impede the flame travel. So
it's a good point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes make more power with less compression.
Right.
More isn't always better. What's up, Crouchy? He's from Australia. He says, hey, Tim and Mike, thanks for your time sharing this valuable information. Greatly appreciate it. Well, we greatly
love my Australian friends. I do a lot of business down in Australia. So
okay. and then I saw this, and I realized it's not Turner, it's Tanner. So I apologize for saying the wrong thing. So thanks, Tanner. There's a lot of guys here from other channels. We all kind of go back and forth. There's probably 6 or 7 channels, I think, that are in the top, at least what I see, and everyone kind of moseys around and stops at each live chat. I mean, we've been talking now for an hour, 43 minutes, Mike.
Okay.
With it right now, 101 people on live. And the lowest I think we've been is about 90.
Okay.
So that's pretty damn good. So thank you so much.
Well, yeah, that's cool. This is my first time doing this, so hopefully I did all right.
Well, those guys will tell you. If you ain't doing a good job, people, you put it in the comments. Mm-hmm. So here's Tanner here. So he says, my biggest concern is combustion chamber size and shape. Who's to say a piston fitting an untouched head will work and one that's decked 100, such as my 340X heads that made a quench pad from none?
Well, this is a case where, so he's decked that head a lot. So what we do is we have a mold kit.
That's what I was just
thinking. Mold kit, and anybody that has milled their heads a lot, it really changes. If you've angle milled it or you've milled it a lot, something like that, we really recommend doing the mold that way because yes, what's changed on the head? I mean, we have calculations at Diamond where we can do some of this stuff, but when it's a lot like that, we're better off with the mold. Then we know exactly where it's at. So we do that a lot. I send out the mold kits a lot because you got a lot of these heads where people don't know what the history is. They bought them used or it's been in 3 or 4 different engines and they don't know where, there's no numbers on it. They don't know what it is or who did it. So it's like, let's do a mold. And that way we get everything right. Because as you angle mill ahead, the valves move forward. So the front brake point is what we're talking about. You go back to your piston. This is the front brake point. So when I ask you, any of you guys, when I ask you what the front brake, to move the front brake point forward because you've milled the heads, that's what I'm talking about. So if you put let's say you're bolting your piston in and your valve is hitting right here.
Yep.
Somebody's probably milled the head and the front brake point needs to move forward. So
now, if you did that, could you just put it in a mill and they could just mill that down?
Most of the time, if you're not going too far, I mean, it's a good idea to call us first because again, Diamond does. Let me find one here. We do a lot of machining underneath through here.
Hold it up. Bring it up. Yeah.
There. We do a lot of machine. This one's like all machined inside.
Yeah.
So it depends on how thin we machined that.
Yep.
Obviously, if it's a blower turbo motor, there's a lot more meat than what a high-end naturally aspirated. There might not be enough room on depending on how. Again, another thing is if you got a long stroke and a really short piston, there's going to be a lot less room to work with there too, because the ringland, where the ringland is, as far as the ringland to the back of the pocket, you can run into those problems too if you're starting to cut a piston. So it's always best to give us a call if you're trying to cut one. But those are things you can do. You can do a mold. We do a lot of people send us molds for their custom heads, and we build the dome. That way we shape the dome exactly in relation to the mold. So
Thank you. This guy, you must know him. He says, "What's up, Mike? Did you plan the shark dive yet?"
I've done enough. You see the sharks behind me.
Oh yeah, I see it there. Yeah.
You can't see this one. The one right here, really.
Okay.
That's the best picture I ever took.
I do see it, but yeah,
that is a great white shark. That I'm in the cage, and he's turning towards me. He's got his head turned toward me. He's turning and aiming towards me, and he's got a big smile on his face.
He just probably wants a custom piston. That's all.
But to answer his question, yes, I've dove with great white sharks. I now have dove with blue sharks, and bull sharks, lemon sharks, hammerheads, and it's one of my things. Ever since I was a kid, I was into sharks. So,
and he even knew a lawyer that was a shark.
So, but yeah, this year I'm hoping to go to Tiger Beach and dive with tiger sharks.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
So let me make sure to order my pistons ahead of time.
Yeah, well, I was going to say the some of this. I was in a cage with the great whites, but with the hammerheads and the tigers, I won't be in a cage. You'll just be sitting on the ground and swimming. They'll be swimming around me. They give you a plastic pipe though to protect yourself with.
Oh, that helps.
You got a three-piece piece of.
Oh yeah, I'm protected.
Three-piece piece of plastic. When I was doing the hammerhead dive, they hand this piece of plastic pipe to you, and they said, if the shark gets too close, just poke him in the nose and push him out of the way.
Oh yeah. Like a lawyer.
But the big thing is, don't act like food, and you're not food.
There it is.
So,
Tim Hilliard says, Mike, can you touch on a difference or advantage between billet and forgings outside of not having a forging for an application? Which we kind of talked about it being
right.
You think about the forging. I mean, all that pressure, the grain is pushed down tight.
Right. The best way to answer that is a forging is always preferable. And really the only time I go billet is if I just can't fit it on a forging. I guess that's the best way to answer that. I always try to do it on a forging. It's also less money. Billet's a lot more expensive. And even though our stuff is high, I do try to look out for people. I'm the one that's probably cringing more than you on price. When I'm quoting some of these prices, I'm like, oh boy, I spent all this time and this is really added up. So, but for the most part, I always lean towards forging. If I can't fit it on a forging, I'll go billet. There's no, like I said, the advantage to billet is you can build anything out of it basically, because it is full round. You can do whatever you want to do. Mm-hmm. There's really not much of a disadvantage other than price. And like I said, ever so slightly less strength, but for the most part, that isn't a big deal. So, we'll go.
There you go, Tim. Thank you. Joel's got another question. He says, okay, now go into piston guided and very narrow wrist pins and why. Flexes is stress. Don't stress out.
So I don't run into a lot of piston guided, but I do run into it a few times a year. And what that is they're basically the rod is no longer guided by the crankshaft; it's guided by the piston. So you build a lot tighter pin boss in it. You can do that with spacers, or you can just build it out of billet. Usually they get built out of billet. because the forgings have wider pen bosses. Most forgings, the only way to do piston guide is do spacers, which we can do, but I don't like. To me, it's just one thing you're adding in. I prefer doing it at that point. I prefer doing it on a billet and building the pen boss exactly where you want. The general idea is that it's less friction because it's a smaller area that's guiding it. I would assume from an engineering standpoint. Again, I'm not an engineer, but I would assume because the piston side is smaller than the rod side, that there's a little bit less friction there. I think it originated maybe with the NASCAR people. Don't quote me on that, but I know a lot. But I know a lot of those were at one point piston guided, and I think that's where. So you'll see some of the real high end engines, do that. Real high like complementer type, high RPM engines. People do piston guided. That's where you see it, and it's supposedly worth a few horsepower, but I don't think it's nothing big power wise. But when you're racing a class like that where you need 2 or 3 horse, they're fighting for 2 or 3 horsepower. So so for those guys, it's something they do. But I don't build a lot of them that way. Just a few.
Well, thank you, Joel. There you go. Now, this is an interesting question because I kind of know what it is, but I didn't ask it because I thought I knew what it was. But someone's asking about the reluctor on like an LS.
Yes.
I mean, it's like the crank trigger thing.
Right. LSs have a reluctor wheel inside, and you're limited on your pen length, and your strength of your piston is somewhat limited because it has to clear that reluctor.
Like, where is it on the crank? Is on the crankshaft?
It's correct? On the crankshaft on the back. Yeah, on the back of the crankshaft. Okay. But it interferes with that number 8 piston.
That's okay. Now I get.
Yeah. But that's how they time the motor and all that, right?
Yeah.
But on the LSs, like you can't do a full round piston on a 4-inch stroke LS, which 4-inch is kind of the more popular one, because this will hit. So you're limited to about a 2/500 or less pin. So it clears, and this is why we developed the LS2K. So you'd have more. It has a 2 1/4 pin, right? Shorter pin. More room here, so the reluctor will clear without really imparting in the strength of the part. Because if you think about it, if you took this piston and had to cut this whole side off to clear, right? You're taking away a bunch of strength.
Sure.
So that's why we did those in the inboards for the LS is because of the reluctor. Now, I will tell you this. If you're building a big horsepower LS motor, you do get to the point where you just want to get rid of that reluctor if you're putting a stroke, like a 4-inch stroke in it, because you can do an external crank trigger like any other engine, right? And then you can use a full round piston and all that. So guys doing like aluminum rod versions of them, stuff like that, where they need, they can get rid of that reluctor. So I do sometimes tell people, hey, you think you might want to get rid of it, but the LS2K will work for you. I don't worry about it, but sometimes it does come up.
Like a big power adder, though, you'd want to get rid of it then.
At some point, yeah, I think it's better to get rid of it. Yes, because it does allow you to build a custom full round piston, which would offer, like I said, a little more stability. But that 2K piston, like it's hard to beat for what most of those guys are doing. Under 2,000 horsepower, still big power and boost and all that, but that seems to work really well for those. And they can use the reluctor, which makes it nice for those guys.
Perfect. Terry Grover, good to see you here, Terry. Tim, I'd like Mike to address if piston coating is worth doing, and is there much gain in horsepower?
Okay, so we probably want to talk about what the coatings are.
Talk about the skirts too. Let's add that into the crown too, so we have the whole thing.
All right, so we have this piston here. This has got moly skirt coating on it.
Okay.
The moly, is a friction reducer.
Yep.
Same thing they put for camshaft lube, stuff like that.
Sure.
It's a friction reducer, right? And then you have gold coating is a ceramic coating on the top.
Man, I like that. Mm-hmm.
So basically, this insulates the top of the piston. And what I tell people is it helps keep the temperature more even across the surface of the piston.
Okay.
And then we have our anodized piston, which this is our hard anodized with, it's actually got a Teflon dip too. They dip it in Teflon for friction reduction. The hard anodized is a chemical treatment of the piston. All right. The other 2 coatings are add-ons, basically sprayed on, right? This is a dip and it's a chemical treatment, anodizing, right?
Yeah.
So it can't come off. You can wear through it. Technically, you can wear through it, but you can't.
How thick is it?
The coating, it's very, very thin. What's the
2 mils?
Yeah, something. Yeah, I was going to say mils, like real thin. But it will protect the piston. So it insulates the piston, makes it harder to burn through. You got the Teflon on it for friction reduction. So this is what I do on the nitrous blower stuff for guys that want coating for those.
Okay.
There's 2 different avenues of people, right? There's the full-on pro mod guy that's going to burn that engine down to win that race. He's probably not going to coat his piston. Okay. He wants the piston to be the fuse, is what I call it. So if he's going to burn it down, he wants it to be the piston that gets burnt down, not his cylinder head, not his block, because he's going to pull it apart, throw another slug in there, and go make another pass.
Right.
Flip side of that is a guy that has a consistent tune-up and is out there having fun and maybe building a lot of horsepower, but he's not going to burn it down. Or if he does burn it down, he's going home, right? So this coating will help his engine last longer and all that. It makes it harder for it to burn through, which is why the other guys want the piston to be the fuse, is they don't want it that hard to burn through.
Okay.
So because you do, if you really burn that one down bad with this in it, you might take out your cylinder head before you take out the piston. But for guys that are running consistent tune-ups, this is great because it offers them a nice coating that'll hold up and their pistons will last a lot longer. Now, there's always power and friction reduction, whether it be moly or Teflon or whatever. Mm-hmm. Is it some kind of big horsepower number? No, I mean, it's nothing huge. It's hard to qualify, exactly how much you're going to make. I mean, every motor is a little bit different. Depends on the inherent design. A longer stroke motor is probably got more to gain than a shorter stroke motor just because it has more friction. But it also can depend on, how tall the piston is,
Yep.
This has got a lot of room here, right? Compared to this, not very much room, right? So, I mean, something, like it could be worth 5 or 10 on something. It might only be worth 2 on something else. Who knows? I mean, as far as the anodized coating, I don't know that I really call it worth power. It's more about saving the engine and having it last longer. And then the ceramic, I usually use the ceramic on, let me put it this way. The anodized coating requires the piston to be custom cut for it because you're changing, it's all in the ring lands and all that. So the ring lands have to be sized differently.
Really? Okay.
So this is kind of a similar thing. It'll help protect the top. It's not quite as strong as the anodizing, but it's easy to add on to like a shelf part or what have you. I also use it on cars that are maybe octane limited. Like you got a car, you're trying to, like we were talking about compression ratio and how much you can get away with. If somebody's trying to build something and they want to go a little higher than they should on compression and try to run pump gas, this will probably be a good idea because it'll help make it more consistent and temperature wise and all that. Okay. So that's kind of where I sell that, is for stuff like that. If I just wanted to add it onto a shelf part because they want some more protection, or for those reasons. So
since I like Fords, could I get it in blue?
Well, it's always gold. Each one is color key. The gold is the ceramic. This is kind of a gray moly. The anodizing with the Teflon is always black. And then we have our old classic anodized, which we used to use, which doesn't have the Teflon. It's kind of a goldish green color.
Yeah, I see that.
So they're color coordinated and they're automatically that color. They don't go in and dye them different colors for.
I had to put this up. My daughter's here listening in. Queen Izzy. I don't know about the Queen business, but it's good to see you, Iz. Hopefully you're learning some piston technology. Mm-hmm. You're going to need it.
There you go.
Thank you for that. So the coatings, that's a good thing. I mean, I don't know. I've heard 2 sides of the coin. Oh, coatings don't do anything. And other people are like, coat whatever you can, DLC, whatever.
Right.
Coatings for the piston or whatever is applicable. So
we do the DLC on the pins. Most of that's done that's really expensive. So most people don't do it, but we do. where I really see the benefit for that is motors that are drawing a lot of vacuum. You're drawing oil away from the pin. Sprint cars, alcohol engines. Sometimes it can, help protect the pin, stuff like that. If you got a lot of alcohol washing through, again, sprint car guys, most of those guys run coated pins all the way through. It's kind of a high end option. Most of the regular guys don't go for it, but if you're building a real high engine and got the budget for it, the coated pins are really nice. But it's mainly a longevity thing. You can usually go that you can probably replace those pistons and put those pins back in the next motor and run them again.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, what's it cost? I mean, I don't expect you to give me a dollar amount to the penny, but I mean,
retail price is like $110 for a coated pin. Yeah.
For one pin.
One pin. Yeah.
So you're talking over 800.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking $1,000 to have coated pins.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. See, I never knew that. Okay.
It's expensive. Yeah, it's really expensive. But it's a nice option. Again, if you got the budget. But for most regular people, it's not something I don't really push it that hard.
Yep.
The people that need it, order it.
They know what they need.
If you don't think you need it, you probably don't.
Yep. Okay.
So, yeah.
Dr. Ron says, good chat, Tim. Thanks for having Mike on. Yes, thank you for being here. This is one of these chats that it's not just talking about history. It's going to get a little bit about you, but it's going into the products that Diamond has, because I have no idea what you guys offer as far as like piston types, quality, coatings, all the applications. I mean, this is good stuff. I thank you for telling me.
We do everything. Like I said, I do everything from a Model T to a big block Chevy to a modern Audi. I do a lot of Audi stuff anymore. I do a lot of custom Audi stuff. Yeah. They're real popular. We got the 2JZs. A lot of people are doing those for the import guys.
Wow.
The import business has really come back around. So
okay.
There are a lot of people getting serious on those things. So we're doing a lot of that. So
hey, take it where you can get it, man. And
I don't really know a lot about a lot of the import engines.
Yeah.
So I struggle with it a little bit because of that. Because I can talk to you all day long about small block Fords and big block Chevys and stuff like that.
Right.
But luckily, I have enough background in the domestic engines that I can apply it to those. So even though I don't know the actual, I know I can quote off the top of my head the specs on any big block Chevy, big block Ford, small block Ford, I don't know that on those cars, right? But I have enough background knowledge so I can talk intelligently to those people.
Sure.
It's just like when I got into the diesel stuff, I first started doing diesel stuff with Diamond a number of years ago. And I had one of my longtime customers, is still a customer of mine today, does a lot of diesel stuff with me. And I told him, I said, well, my background's mainly big block Chevys. That's what I built for my own race cars, stuff like that. And he a really strong guy, really knows a lot about diesels. But we took our heads and we put them together. My knowledge on gas engines and stuff like that, and kind of applied that knowledge to his diesel stuff. And we just went back and forth, and we really kind of gelled together and started building diesel stuff and all that. And that's the same guy that he'll like I said, they'll run those pistons a couple seasons in pull tractors, making that kind of power. If the tune-up's right and they follow his instructions on the tune-up, it's a big thing. They can burn them down really easy, but they follow they can run those pistons for a good amount of time, and they hold up. We just kind of went back and forth, and we developed a relationship, and we still doing it to this day. And he's one of my stronger diesel customers. So
that's interesting. I had some people when I met at PRI. I think it's Power Driven Diesel. It's a YouTube channel, but they have like 100,000 subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
Could even be the same guy, but they're going to come on and talk diesels with us because I don't know that much about them. I mean, I have my basics, but I always love learning that kind of stuff. So
you're always learning, right? We're always learning. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So get the likes.
I will never tell you I know everything. And again, my collective knowledge comes from people like that, talking back and forth and learning. That's why I can talk. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be able to talk about a diesel engine, but
learning.
Yeah, I'm still always learning, and I'm collecting that knowledge from all these sources, and then I'm basically feeding it back to everybody out there in the world, so to help them build their cars and go faster and do it better, so.
Well, we're talking now 2 hours and 4 minutes. I never thought it would last this long, and 111 people. So there's lots of questions. We'll keep going a little bit. But make sure you put up the like, guys. That's how we get up in the algorithm. So put that up. Thank you. Jeff says, what diamond alloy is 71X?
2618.
There it is.
How you can tell, 71 is a forging number. And so all the Pistons have a forging number on them. That's just, you don't really need to know that, but the X part, X means 2618. If it doesn't have an X on it, then it's 4032. But if it has an X on it, then it's 2618.
That's a good way to look at it. Thank you for telling us that. And this is interesting. Racer D says the history lesson. Ed Winfield, I remember him, a full custom guy, invented the 3/4 cam in the late 40s. All cams were regrinds. So what he would do was a racing lobe on the intake and a stock exhaust lobe, hence 3/4 cam.
Huh.
So
it goes way back further than we thought.
Yeah, he's from the old Western Guard style of customizing. So
I just remember hearing that all the time back when I was growing up in the 80s and we were hot-rodding cars. That was a terminology you heard a lot, So
all the time.
Yeah, you don't hear it too much anymore. So we're all dating ourselves.
And then BR says, "Hey, diamond pin fitting, they perform is dead nuts on, Tim. Thank you."
So that's done with a diamond honed.
Yep.
And basically, it's a program, and they just program in the number, and it's done with a diamond hone, so it should be spot on. So
perfect.
Especially if you get diamond quality, it should be spot on.
I've been waiting for this question. I was going to ask it myself, but I said if someone will bring it up. And we've talked about, a lot of the rings we talked about. You said when you get down to like ring specs as far as clearance, you always say, look, go to the manufacturer, what Total Seal tells you or whatever. You've told me that before.
Right.
Right.
When it gets to the really thin rings,
yes,
like 16ths and 1.5s and all that, we have our standard setups.
Okay.
But when you start basically about, sometimes I'm 43s, depending on the application. Once you get to 0.9s, 0.8s, 0.7s, 0.6s, definitely once you're below 0.8, at 0.8 and below, it's always what we call a secondary cut. And that's an extra option for the custom pistons. And what it does is it goes on a separate machine that has a very precise black cut for the rings, okay? And at that point, when I fill out the sheet, I'm going to put in there a groove height and a groove depth. Now, you can specify that as a customer for whatever you want. Most of them don't. But you're welcome to do that. But what I do is when I get to those thin rings, when Total Seal sends me over the ring quote, I'll tell him, hey, send me over the groove sizes you want on that. And Total Seal will give you the groove sizes that they want them cut at specifically for those really thin, because you got to think about it. When you get to those really thin rings,
oh my God,
27, 20, I think they're down to 19 right now. That some of the super stock and complimentary guys are running. It's got to be a very precise cut for those things. You can't have too much clearance in there because they're not going to seal right. It's
that makes sense. Yeah,
exactly. It's such a thin ring. Everything's got to be perfect. So yeah, we have what the secondary cut. You can specify the groove cuts, but Total Seal is I usually just go by what they tell. Those are the guys that are doing the testing on the rings. Total Seal does a lot of testing on rings. I'm sure you've seen their stuff online. They do a lot of different things on it. They're constantly testing home procedures and ring sealing and technology. They're top of the game for that kind of information. So there's no point for me to override what the experts know.
Well, there you go. I get it. No doubt about that. What about?
And that's another reason I don't get it. If somebody asks me about how to hone things, whatever, I actually try to. Again, it more has to do with time. I don't have time to get into discussion most of the time.
Yep.
But if somebody asks me about honing, what do I hone this to? When I always just refer them directly to Total Seal. They have specific honing procedures, and it can vary based on the machine that the machine shop has.
That's right.
Using this stone, 3 strokes of this, 5 strokes of that, type of thing. Yeah. They have they have all that information, and they're happy to. I don't have time to get into that normally because I'm too busy with everything else. So I usually just send people that and gaps. Well, I have a gap chart, but it's just a copy of their gap chart. People call me about gaps. I just follow the Total Seals. everybody has different ideas on gaps, whether to gap the second ring larger. I try not to get bogged down into those things and just go with what Total Seal says. And it's, again, unfortunately, there's only so much. Again, I'm trying to get to everybody as quick as I can because I don't want to keep anybody from going racing.
Perfect. Because you always get back to them.
Right, exactly.
Possible. So here's another one that's great, I think, for us guys to talk about. And it's gas ports in the piston versus gas ported rings, and gas ported pistons in general versus non-gas.
Okay. That's a good question. I thought when Total Seal came out with the gas ported rings that you'd see more of a transition to it.
Yeah.
But you don't.
Okay.
Now I can't answer that question. Why? Really? The idea is great. I think it works. I don't know that it works any better than the piston. I haven't seen that. I haven't had anybody come back to me. Again, my information comes from my engine builder and what they use and all that. That's how I learn and all that. So, so far, and I'm not going to say I don't think there's anything wrong with the gas ported rings. If somebody calls and wants gas ported rings, never going to talk them out of it. The idea seems sound to me. I don't have any reason why it shouldn't work just as good. Maybe it might work better, but I've not had any feedback from any engine builder that says this is just the best thing since sliced bread and it's going to make more power this way. Never had that from anybody. So I'm at the point where it's whatever your preference is. Gas ports definitely make power. They help the ring seal better, whether it be in your ring or your piston is, kind of up to you. But mostly people are still using gas ports in the pistons. If I sell a set of gas ported rings in a month, I'm probably doing good.
Okay.
But I sell gas ported pistons every day.
Got it. Maybe
it hasn't caught on yet. I don't know. I'm curious. I'd be curious to see what the Total Seal guys say about it. I know they push it. Well, of course they push it because they're getting the extra money for it. They're getting the extra money for it instead of me doing the extra option. It's like $10 a piston to do side gas ports, right? Well, they're getting that because it's like an extra 100 and something for gas ported rings. So certainly they're going to push it. I'm not, but they definitely, whatever you do, it definitely helps with power. And then the other big question is whether to go side gas ports or top gas ports. And I go back to that's personal preference too. I've had, in all my years, I've only had one engine builder tell me that he back-to-back, truly back-to-back. Now, there's lots of engine builders that have a preference that say top gas ports make a lot more power.
Right.
So I'm not saying they're wrong or anything like that. Some people think that, some people say they don't, whatever. There's all kinds of opinions. But I've only had one engine builder tell me that he truly back-to-back one. And he built two engines exactly the same, which is the only way you could truly back-to-back it, right? Agree?
Yeah, right.
And he said that he saw like 1 horsepower difference. So I tell people, yes, gas ports are great for race cars, definitely make more power, help the ring seal better, all good, right? Which one you go with, totally up to you. Okay. There are some advantages, disadvantages. Other than that, like top gas ports, everybody kind of agrees that they can carbon up easier. So if the motor's going to be out in service longer, maybe you go side gas ports instead. If the motor is not going to be torn down enough where that's not a concern, then top gas ports are fine. And if somebody doesn't have a preference, then I do them on the side, and I'll tell people why I do them on the side, because it's cheaper.
Cheaper for the patient. I mean, the customer.
Yeah, it's $25 for top gas ports, and it's $10 for side gas ports.
The good point that you made there is the fact that, depending on the service life of whatever engine you have, I mean, think about the combustion gases and the carbon and getting inside those ports. Everyone I've ever pulled apart seems to have some debris in it.
Right. Yeah, and if you plug up the gas ports, it's no longer doing anything for you.
Right.
So,
but with the side type, you definitely can. It gets,
right. Well, that's the whole idea behind Total Seal's gas ported rings, is that they don't carbon up supposedly because they're always moving and there's nothing really to get caught in there. So if you look on it on the face of that, technically their ring should be better than gas ports in the Piston.
Yeah.
Technically, if you look at it face value that way.
Sure.
But again, I've never had anybody back to back it. I'm sure there's somebody, not saying somebody hasn't done it. I just haven't, nobody's called me and said, hey, I'm back. Yeah, this again, nobody's called me and told me that. So,
Joel, you're on here. You did a lot of NASCAR testing. So comment down there if they have that kind of thing. We'll see what he says.
That would be a good source for something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Lance Klotz, good to see you back here again.
Oh,
the Sharks question. Now he says, great intel, Mike.
Oh, is he? He's the one that. Oh, Lance is going to go. He's going to Tiger Beach with me.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
He's going to be. Yeah, we got to plan that trip. Me and Lance are supposed. I got him conned into going to Tiger Beach with me and dive with the Sharks.
Good.
Nobody usually goes with me to dive with Sharks for some reason.
Well, I'll just bring 2 of those pieces of PVC pipe with you, will you? You're going to need them. So now I'm not sure if this is the same person, but this is what they said. R-Dub says, that's Lance of CSM Racing Engines. I don't know if that's the same Lance, is it?
Yeah, Lance. Yeah.
Okay,
Lance,
there it is.
A good buddy of mine. Does a lot of Pistons, sells a lot of stuff and all that. So
thanks, Lance.
And he's a fellow diver. So yes. Mm-hmm.
It looks like it when you see his little icon here. It looks like a shark fin in the top of it. You see it on his little.
Yeah.
Looks like that. Now, where are they located?
He's in California.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Bay Area, California. Mm-hmm.
Joel says, it's super cool that DragBoss's daughter Izzy watches her dad. Awesomeness. It is awesome. I mean, she might not be on here anymore. She's on here for a little while. She listens, but I think sometimes she gets bored with some of the stuff that we talk about. But other times she tells me, she asks me questions about it.
Right.
So thank you. It says here from Raging Bull 3406, what does Mike consider the optimum compression height that balances lightweight and stability in the bore?
That's one of those questions that's real hard to answer because it can be different based on deck height and all that.
And what engine you have too. I mean,
yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a 1-inch compressor, right? In the right application. But there's nothing wrong with a 1-200, 1-300. I can tell you most everything we build anymore racing wise is usually about 1-300 range down to about 1 inch. That more would have to do with the engine itself. Like I like to say, what makes a motor happy? Let's talk about Fords. You're into Fords. Let's say a 3/4 stroke with a 5/4 rod and an 8.2 deck. It's not really a happy engine. It's too much stroke and you can't put a long enough rod on it to make it has a lot of side load on the cylinders. It's a very popular combination,
right?
But it's not to me. It's not as happy in the engine as the 3 1/4 stroke. So that has a 109 compression height.
And what is that?
Not really because the 347 has a 109 compression height.
Yeah,
not really because of the 109 necessarily. The other one has a 1165 compression height. It more has to do with the strength and the rod length. And this is just my opinion, really, because other people might. I'm not saying that a 347 is a bad engine. Lots of people build them, they make a lot of torque and make good power, but they do seem to wear faster. So I would say that the how much stroke you're putting in the deck height of the block and all that might have more to do than the actual compression height. And that would all be dependent on the taller the deck is, the more stroke you can put in it and all that. But it's a good question, but very difficult question to answer. Another motor, 351 Windsors, like I think a 4-inch stroke with a 6.2 or 6.25 rod, which is about 1-200 range compression height. I built one of those for a buddy of mine.
Yeah.
And that was a good running motor. That was a good running motor. But some people put 4.100s, 4.17s and all that in them. I think it's too much for that deck height at that point. I think it's still makes great power and all that, but I think it's a little bit too much stroke. But then, again, that's just a personal preference, really, not from just from what I see,
Well, it's the same thing like with a Cleveland with a 4-inch stroke, a
Mhm.
408 with a 4-inch stroke.
Mhm.
People say that too. Oh, that's too much stroke for the wrist pins and the oils and rings are in the wrist pin and blah blah blah.
Right.
I don't know. Works good for me.
Well, if you're building a naturally aspirated motor, it's not too
Yeah.
bad. If you're now, I will say, it's an easier question to answer for a power adder engine, because you want the strength and the ring lands and all that.
Got it.
And of course, and a lot of people, I think, put too much stroke in their power adder engines. Again, this is my thought process only. Other people may disagree, but I try. I try to get people, if they haven't bought parts yet or whatever, to think about this, to try to get like in the, like say 1,250 to 1,300 range or a little bit higher, depending on what it is, for a power adder motor. So I have enough room because what happens is when you have a really short piston, you got your top land, your second land, your third land. All right. So as you go shorter, you run out of room, right? So what's the first thing you do? First thing you do is you cut the ring size. So instead of using a 16th ring, you go down to a 43.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now you're too short. We can fit the 43s, but we don't have enough room, right? So what's the second thing? You cut the third land. Okay. Then you cut the second land. Then you cut the top land. Depending on how short your compression height is, you have to start making sacrifices. Like say your typical 4-inch stroke, 351 Windsor, right?
Okay.
1,250 compression height. That piston, I got enough room to put a 300 or so land in the top, 200 or so in the second, 100 or so in the third. With a 16th ring, you can make lots of power on that combination, and you actually have to work at it to hurt it. Now let's flip back to our 347. It's only got a 109 compression height. First thing is I don't have room for 16 rings at all, not without having no land in it.
Right.
All right. Now, so I'm automatically trying to get you to put 43s in it, but also I can put the top land at 300 or so probably, but I'm going to have the second land like at 160, 180, maybe third land at 60 or 70. So what happens to that motor? Guy goes on the rev limiter with 20 pounds of boost on it or 300, 400 horsepower with the nitrous. It crushes the ring land.
Yep.
So, but if you had the thicker compression height, it wouldn't. So these are the things I talk to people all the time about taking stroke out of their big power adder motors. I had one the other day. The guy was going to do a 4-inch, trying to build like a 3,000 horsepower LS motor. He trying to do a 4-inch stroke with a standard deck height. Well, it's like take some stroke out of it. You can still make your power, but now you can do a full round piston. You can do your aluminum rod. You can even do a 990 pin now. Because once you get to 2,500, 3,000 horsepower, you like to have the bigger pin in it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people want to do that. They want to go the bigger pin. But if you do that on a real short compression height piston, you can actually make it worse.
Okay.
Yeah, the pin's stronger, but now if I don't have enough room for lands and rings, then you're not really helping yourself out. So you got to, so in those motors, it's really easy to answer that question that he had. Mm-hmm. I like to see at least one mid 1,200s, 1,300 range. If it's a Hemi, it's got to be in the 1,300 range to have enough room because their top ring has to be way down for the pocket to fit.
Right.
So, and if you want to use the Hemi, the big Chrysler 1094 pin, you got to be up there in the 1,300 range. Again, if you're trying to do that on a 1.1, like you're trying to build a big block Chevy with a 1,150 compression height and a 1094 pin, it ain't going to be a very strong part because it's not going to have enough room for ring lands.
Well, the thing between you were talking about the Windsor, the Windsor's at 9.5 deck height, whereas the Cleveland's 9.2. So now it even compounds it worse. When you start going to that stroke, to get that ring in the right place.
Now, it's not that those guys with the short compression heights can't make those motors work, and there's plenty of people out there doing it. So, every time you tell somebody that, is like, oh, I do that and it runs fine. Well, there's plenty of people that do. Again, all my stuff is based on what I see and what I see people have problems with. And a lot of people have problems with longer stroke motors hurting their engines. And for the people that know this and have to build, there's always two different types of racers. There's the racers that run a certain class and they got to build whatever they got to build to be competitive. Mm-hmm. And they know they're going to hurt parts at it. and they understand that that's not the guy I'm trying to address. He knows what he has to do, and he knows he's got to build this long stroke motor, the biggest bore, the biggest stroke, and whatever to be competitive, and he knows he's going to hurt it. That's fine. What I'm talking about is the guys that don't know. They're trying to build their first motor or second, or whatever.
Right.
And nobody's ever told them that this big long stroke is going to make the motor weaker. Because I'll sometimes tell people, I said, "Are you?" Because they'll go to order and tell me what they're building, and I'll say, "Are you?" And if I get one of these deals, one of my first questions is, "Are you sure you want to build this engine combination?" And they'll go, "Why?" I said, and I'll start explaining it, about the proper land strength and how I work. Thinner rings first, thinner lands, and so forth. And I said, and if the guy says, no, I'm sure I want to do it, I know what I'm doing, whatever, that's fine. I'll shut up and build you whatever you want to build. I'm just, trying to help somebody, and not telling them how to build their engine or this won't work or that won't work. I just see that a lot of the guys with too long a stroke hurt more parts, and if they know that and understand it, well, maybe they would build it. I had that guy switched from a 3 to a 375 stroke after our conversation. He says, "Let me call my engine builder," after I told him what.
Yeah.
And his engine builder said, "Yeah, he's right. Yeah, you don't need that stroke." He was trying to make 2,500, 3,000 horsepower, so you don't need the stroke to make the power. You're just going to add more boost until you get there.
Exactly. Yep.
And you're losing 20 or 30 horsepower with a stroke, but that's 1 pound of boost, right? I mean, come on.
Makes sense.
Right. So those are all things that people, I wish more people would ask the question before they bought parts. I get a lot of, already got these parts. What do I do? And this is one of the things you're seeing now with people building longer stroke motors, especially like small block Chevys. Everybody going to the 5.850 rod, okay, instead of a 6-inch rod.
Yep.
Well, it gives me 150 thousandths more room to work with, so I can make them a stronger part. Same thing with a big block 632. Classic way to build a 632 was a 475 stroke, 6.7 rod, and a 10.2 deck, right? What's a 112 compression height? Those if you're trying to do nitrous or blower on that, you got 43 rings in there already, and you got like a 130 or 140 second land. It's paper thin. It's very easy to hurt. I can build that piston super thick and strong, so the piston overall geometry holds up well, right? But the ring lands is a weak spot, and if it sneezes, if it misfires with 500 horsepower of nitrous on it, or it goes on the Revlin, one of the two things happens. It'll crush those ring lands, and then you're putting another piston in. So it's like a lot of people are building them with 666 rods, 665, 663, 6600. They're going shorter rods. The other thing they can do, which nobody really does, is go to a taller deck block, 10.4 deck block. 10.4 deck block, you can run the 6.7 rod, and now you got a 132 compression height instead of 112. Now you got a piston that you actually have to work at to hurt.
Right.
Instead of just sneeze and hurt. So
good way to look at it. Good analogy.
Yeah, exactly.
One cough.
Yeah. So, that's something that I spend a lot of time talking to people about stuff like that, And again, if somebody says, "Hey, no, this is what I want to do," fine, that's fine. I just want to make sure you know that, And so I've had people tell me to shut up, and I'll shut up. They tell me to shut up.
I never realized until talking with Joel and stuff about, how bad that when you hit the rev limiter, how bad that is on your engine.
It's hard on them, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're loaded down with 500 horsepower with the nitrous and all the fuel that goes along with that.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that, until we started getting in more depth. It's like, wow.
Right.
Makes a difference. What about this one, Mike? Are diesel racing pistons made in steel now by Diamond? Seem to recall Diamond YouTube video on that.
A number of years ago, we tried to make steel pistons.
Okay.
But they never really got it off the ground for whatever of course, we didn't have any real basis for the design, like how much were they going to grow, or not grow, how much ring gaps they needed and all that. And they had gotten a bunch of steel forgings or whatever in, and they had a machine set up for it. And the problem was, I guess the problem was that we weren't giving them away. to get into the business.
Got it.
Somebody had to make the investment. Well, I don't think really Diamond wanted to just, machine some and give them to these engine builders necessarily. I don't know that to be fact, but that would be my idea, is that people didn't want to spend the money, to develop them.
Okay.
So I just never saw the development go anywhere. It kind of flatlined and it never went anywhere. So they ended up taking that machine and refocusing it on other stuff. And so we just got out of it. But, we do really well with our billet diesel stuff. I have really good success with it. Again, making big power and all that. Do I think the steel is a good idea if somebody developed it and all that? Yeah, I think it probably could be. But I don't know how much of a market there. And that may have been part of it too. They may not have figured there was enough market to spend all that time having a machine dedicated to it, and for what they cost to machine. Because steel's like a lot harder to machine than aluminum. So bit costs. There's a lot of things in there that I didn't hear from the machining business side of it.
Right.
And all that. I'm the frontline guy. So I'm speculating to some degree, but. Yeah, it just never went anywhere. So.
Hell, they even figure out how much electricity one machine uses versus another.
Well, all these things are something that that I don't need to bother with. So, yeah.
Thanks. Crouchy's from Australia says, "Hey, Mike, we have shark driving cages with great whites down at Port Lincoln in South Australia, my home state. Try putting that on your list too. They're huge down here, and there are lots of tuna."
Diving with great whites was a dream of mine for many years, and that is the ultimate shark to dive with for sure. I highly recommend anybody having the means to do it, to go do it. It was the time I went to Guadalupe Island off of Mexico, and that's one of the best places to go because the water's clear, and you can see basically 60, 80 feet. So you see them coming, and you also see them disappear when they swim under you. We had 9 different great whites show up over 3 days. And the biggest one was a 17-foot female, and she literally swam right in front of me. Like if I had stuck my hand out of the cage, I could have touched her. And her big black eye was on me the whole time. And at the time, it was early in the morning. I was the only one in the cage, and there was one guy. There was 2 cages. There's one guy in the other cage, and then I was in the cage next to him. When normally there's 4 people when the cage is in the boat I went on. And that shark swam by me, the 17-foot female, and she had her eye on me the whole time. She swam right in front of me, just like right here to the computer, just like right in front of me, and then dived underneath me and disappeared. So, and then another day we had 2 sharks on a date. We had a male and a female, and they were swimming together like dolphins, basically. They were swimming together all day long, and they circled around us. It was like they were on a date at the human zoo because we were the ones in the cage.
Going out to dinner. That's what they're doing. So Chuck Smith says, "I have a 360 sprint car engine I'm building. I have the 2618 forged pistons with 14-1 with gapless 043s. What would you recommend for piston to wall clearance and piston gap ring?"
So piston wall depends on the design of the piston. It's going to be somewhere between 5 and 7 thousandths. If it's a regular forging, it's probably going to be, 5.5. If it's an inboard forging, it's probably going to be more like 6.5. But it really depends on the design and who built the piston. As far as the ring gaps, again, I'd send that back to Total Steel. I think their ring gap factor on something like that is like 5 or 6 thousandths per inch of bore, right off the top of my head. But what I tell people on ring gap, because again, Total Steel does testing on this, and I trust those guys. They're at their top of their game. They have a ring gap deal on their chart, and it's basically a multiplier factor. So you read for their application on their website. It's got it in their text section, and it says for this application, bore times this much. And I'm pretty sure that's probably about 5.5, 6 thousandths times whatever bore size it is, whether it be 4030 or 4125. It'll probably come up around there. Probably. So that's probably somewhere in the, if I had to guess off my head, probably like 20, 25 thousandths range for the top ring, somewhere in that range. Maybe not quite that much if it's a smaller bore. But follow Total Steels. Go to their website and just go with their deal. That's the best way for that. And And I'm sure whoever's piston he has will have something very close to what I'm saying.
Sure.
But it can have to do with profiles and how they've machined it. Can change it a little bit. So,
all right.
sprint cars are very hard on pistons.
Oh, yeah.
So if anything, always lean towards the loose side more than the tight side. If there's a range you're thinking of, so because they usually run them pretty hard and hot.
There you go, Chuck. Thank you. Joel says, talk about the problems with a piston that goes out the bottom of the bore and how you might change the skirt for a piston that has no choice but to.
All right. So every piston has what you call a fit point.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So the fit point needs to stay in the bore. So if the fit point comes out of the bore, what happens?
Rock.
Yeah. And it'll tear itself up.
Yep.
So as you get shorter on compression height or less sleeve, you have to move the fit point up. So our measurements on our pistons are usually anywhere from like 500 thousandths down from the oil ring to like 1 inch down from the oil ring. Let's say somewhere in that range. Shorter compression height pistons are going to have it moved up further. This is a good thing to talk about because your fit point can also have stability issues with the pin. So the further you move it up, you do lose some, and short compressions can have less stability. This is why I'm always talking to people about going to smaller pins on really short compression height pistons, because I believe it offers more stability. And I've had this conversation with a number of engine builders. Now, I'm not talking about power adder engines because you can't, but on naturally aspirated, like small like Chevys or whatever.
Yeah.
When you're doing a 1 inch compression height, if I were building the engine, I'd put an 866 pin in it. So I think it offers more stability, gives you a little more room to fiddle with that fit point.
Package,
yeah. So instead of using a 927 pin, I've been talking to some engine builders, and I'm trying to get one of the big ones to switch. That builds big engine like 598s and a short deck and a big block Chevy, like where he gets down to like a 106 compression height. So build that with a 927 pin. So it must be a much better part. It also gives you more room for rings, because what happens with a 990 pin, you run out of room for rings. Your lands are paper thin. Even naturally aspirated, they're paper thin. So now you have to go to 0.9 ring. Most of those things I try to get them to go to 0.9 rings instead of the 43s, because they're shorter radial depth, and I can move the top ring up further, and it gives me a little more room to work with. But the real key is to go to the smaller pin on something like that.
Now that smaller pin going, what's the next size down from 927?
Well, that'd be like a big block would be going from a 990 to a 927.
Okay.
But your next step down is usually an 866 or even down to 827.
So 866, what's the horsepower compared to the two as far as?
Well, see, that's the thing. Everybody says, well, I didn't think I could do that because the pin's too small.
Right.
But it's not. Look, pro stock guys, I got pro stock guys running 866 is the biggest pin they run, like NHRA pro stock.
Yeah.
I've seen some of those guys run 827s and 787s. So
it's strong enough for.
I haven't done a lot of those. I don't handle a lot of those accounts, but I know the one I did mostly with was doing 866 pins on them. But they're all around 1 inch compression height or so. The 866 pin. Well, there's motors are making about 1,500 horsepower, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in
right close to it. Yeah.
I mean, they don't advertise that, but yeah. You just go to a thicker pin. So you put enough wall thickness in it, it'll be fine. So
nice.
But that's what I would do. Like if you're building a 4.5 or 4, like a 590, a 4.5 stroke, in a short deck block, and you've got like a 1060 compression height, I would, the shelf stuff doesn't have it that way because but the rods are out there. Build it with a smaller pin. I think it'd be a nicer part. And I'm trying to get some, I keep on trying to tell people that, but they'll listen eventually. I think they'll maybe come around. Again, everybody's thinking more power technology is evolving. That's just one of the things. And I first learned that from the motors I have. I have 2 R5 P7s for my Challenger land speed project that I've been working on forever. And when I pulled the engine parts, they had 866 pins in them.
Okay.
So, and they have like a 1165 compression height. So NASCAR was doing that. They were using smaller pins. So
and you can always bush the rod, right?
You could push the rod, but there are rods. Those were Lentz rods in there. They were made for the 866 pins.
Oh, but I'm saying if you switch to a smaller pin and you have a,
you can push it. But the ideal thing is to have a rod that's made for that. So then you don't end up with a bunch of, a small end height on it, that you don't need necessarily.
Okay.
Because you can use a little bit lighter rod. It'd be a little heavier rod than you needed probably. So, and there are rods out there for that. Again, not for everybody, but it's something to think about. So.
Perfect. Thank you. What about TP line skirt coating? I don't know.
Line coating is what he's talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
My feedback from my engine builders is the ones that use it seem to really like it. We can go back to our inboard forging thing here. Remember how I said it has to run a little bit looser?
Yes.
I've had a few engine builders that want to run the inboard forgings, but they know they have to be looser, but they don't really like the fact that they rock more at that point.
Okay.
So they use the line-to-line coating. And it seems to really help them take the rock out when they first start to run them. It takes the rock out, and it seems to really work for them. So it's a different company. It's not my company. I'm not, but I've had a lot of engine builders use them and like them. The other place where I've had people use them, if you've got a motor, you pull it apart, it's a little loose, say a thou or two loose, and the guy doesn't have the budget. They're otherwise good, doesn't really have the budget. And can I line-to-line coat these and run them again? And I tell people, I understand you want to get another season out of them or what have you if they're not too loose. I had one the other day ask me about it, and I think he was like 12 or 13 thousandths. He was way out. And I told him the same thing. I said, if it was 1 or 2 out, I'd probably do it. But when it's way out, you probably ought to hone and go ahead and replace those pistons, But if it's just a little bit out and you just want to get through one more season, it seems to work well. I've had a number of people tell me it does really good at those situations.
The engine I've been racing is a 4030 bore or a 4030 piston with a 4035 bore.
Mm-hmm.
So I had them put 2,000ths on the skirt so I could keep running them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It works,
Yeah. People seem to have good success with it. So I've never heard anything bad about them or anything like that. So, but I don't work for the company. So, so that's a good, plug for me being completely independent. So
that's it. And I'll have them on and we'll do a live chat with them and we'll see what they say.
And I got customers that I drop ship stuff to them all the time. It's like, hey, finish the pistons, ship them the line to line, so.
Thanks, Greg. Juliana Strange. Mike's been our piston guy for years. Did you get snow, Mike? We remember when you saw your first snow at PRI.
No, we did not get snow here. See, I live in Florida, so I actually work remote for them.
There you go.
And no, it was 25 degrees here, though. It's been cold.
Well, Joel's in North Carolina and told me they got 12 inches of snow.
Yeah.
Unusual.
I think further up, maybe up in the Panhandle, they probably got some, but we didn't get any here. But we very well could have. It was so cold last night when the wind was coming in and all that. So it was it's about the coldest it's been since I moved back to Florida. So moved back a few years ago, and I live near the water, so we get the cold breezes off the ocean. So
he's sweating. He ain't got no cold going on. Tanner says Thanks for learning me up, guys. I'm about to go check out my buddy Jamie at Dead Garage. Mike, I may hit you up for some obscure Mopar stuff in the future. Thank you.
That's cool. Yeah. Like I said, I've done Chevy stuff, and now I'm on Mopars. I got a Challenger I'm building right now. So
thank you.
Yeah. So
Joel says, when talking about DLC pin coatings, it was a longevity thing on our NASCAR engines. Steel on steel.
They weren't running the bushing, so they had to run the coating. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good point, Joel. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate that. Terry says, hi, Tim and Mike. Great discussion. You know what, guys? We've been talking for 2 hours and 44 minutes. Still, it's never gone lower than 95 people, which is good for a live chat. That's awesome. And we appreciate you being here. And I'm just going to keep going until we get the questions are coming towards an end.
Okay.
Usually it's like three hours, it seems to be. I don't know, but
I didn't think I would interest that people that much, really. I'm just a normal dude.
Hey, you interest us. Now,
I'm just a frontline soldier, you know.
yeah, well, now you're going to be a famous YouTuber. So John says the knowledge is collective, is amazing. People have different pieces of the puzzle. It's great. Because like I always say, on this side that you can see the comments, I don't know if you can, Mike, on your screen.
I got it. I see the questions at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, but on the side is where they all collect.
Well, I've got it on full screen so I can see it better. So I think I lost that part of it.
And there's a lot of people that have their own conversations on that side and comments, and it's pretty interesting to see that. So thank you guys. Appreciate that.
Well, that's the good thing. Again, like my knowledge comes from all the engine builders that I've talked to for the last 30 some years in the industry. And I've known some of the top level engine builders and all that, and some of the small guys that nobody's ever heard of. Some of those guys have 1 or 2 man shops, and they'll say this, and that. And I'm like, hey, that makes a lot of sense and all that. And I can tell when I'm talking to somebody that somebody really knows what they're doing and all that, and who I trust to give me good information. And, and sometimes if on my own stuff, if I'm, talking about Fords, when I was building that Ford motor, the 1 year only, how did I ended up with the 1 year only 1969 block where everything's different on it, right? The deck height.
Okay.
I go to put the bearings in and the tang's on the wrong location. Right. Yes. So I'm like, what the hell? And you couldn't, it's like, what do I do? And I remember calling, I don't remember who it was, but I called one of my Ford engine guys I really knew well. I'm like, this is a 69 block. The tangs are on. I can't find bearings with the right tangs to fit this thing. And he says, well, you got 2 things you can do. You either grind the tang off. You don't really need it because crush is what holds it in.
Exactly.
Or you find a new slot in there on the opposite side for it to fit it in the block. And so I ended up grinding my own little slots for the tangs to fit in is what I decided to do. And that was a good running little motor. It was only a pump gas 4030 bore, 4-inch stroke, 351 Windsor, and went in an 87 Mustang with a 6-speed and air conditioning.
Oh, wow.
Street tires, and the thing went 1150s at 122 mile an hour.
Dang it, man. A fun car, too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, the guy drove it around and all that. And, the best thing about it was the day he called me. He said, because this is just 87 Mustang, just regular Mustang, right? Yeah. Street car, full interior, air conditioning, 5-speed, pump gas, flat top. It had Dart 195 heads on it and a hydraulic roller camshaft. Nothing special motor, but just good, solid, happy motor is what I like to call it because it's a good combination. And that car, and had a mechanical fuel pump on it. So he'd run out of fuel on the top end. So we had to run the float level kind of high in the carburetor to get it to run out the top end.
Okay.
But it ran 11, like I said, it went 1150s at 122. You couldn't go any faster. Didn't have a roll cage in it, or roll bar. So he really couldn't go any faster anyway. So I don't know if he ever bothered putting a fuel pump. I told him put an electric fuel pump on it, probably pick up a 10th or 2. But his buddy had one of those at the time. This is it's like, I don't know, 15 years ago. Had Super Snake or whatever, $60,000 Mustang, supercharged, 600 some horsepower. So they line up at Atlanta Dragway evidently one day. And my guy, my engine beat the Super Snake. Technically, the Super Snake had more power and all that should have ran, but the guy couldn't control it. He couldn't get it to launch.
Traction, man.
Yeah. And my guy smoked him, and he was so happy that his old Mustang beat this new $60,000 car, this nothing engine, right? He was just so excited, And it's like.
Ingenuity, man. Backyard ingenuity, man.
But that was the thing, I called one of my guys. I was like, what do I do? I like this type of stuff. So now of course, now I'm at the point where I don't even think twice about grinding on something. Everything needs to be modified, cut, fixed, whatever. It's just part of life with race cars and all that. You have to modify this, cut that. It's just part of life, So.
That's it. I love it, man, because it's modification. Everything needs to be ground out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
JL Engineering 369 says, evening, fellas. Retired aerospace engineer from Airbus Helicopters out of Grand Prairie, Texas. An ex-pro stock truck puller and racer here. This seems to be where the like-minded individuals hang out. And here's what I'm going to tell you, Mr. Engineer. The bottom line is this, DragBoss Garage. You want to learn and see stuff you're not going to see anywhere else, this is the channel because it's going full bore. You're going to have every representative from every company out there talking about their products. We have Darren Morgan here. We had Chad Spire. A lot of guys. This is where you want to learn. This is where you come. And Mike has been presenting a ton of stuff for us. So thank you so much. Here's another interesting one for you, Mr. Engineer and Mike. Sometimes they use both horizontal and top gas ports at the same time.
I've done that a few times.
Yep. I think
I don't know if it helps anymore, but I've had people ask for it.
Yep.
It doesn't seem to cancel each other out or do anything odd or weird. So is there a benefit to it? Yeah.
It could be. Sounds like a NASCAR trick.
So
Terry says, are piston coatings a must-have, or do you consider it nice to have? What would the priority of what coat go for what budget?
Never a must. Coatings are never a must.
There it is.
But yes, they can be nice to have. I sell probably the Molly skirt coating as a friction reducer more than anything.
Yeah.
So now the only thing about that is I don't use it with alcohol, because if you get alcohol on it, it can wash off pretty easy. You have to do that. If you're sealed up, well, it'll last, but you got to be really careful. So usually on an alcohol motor, most of the time I don't sell coatings at all, really. Unless they're doing a blower deal where they want the hard anodized or something. That's the one that really holds up. But for any gasoline car, street car, what have you, the Molly, race car, street car, I like it a lot on like my Cuda. When I built the pistons for it, I put the Molly skirt coating on it because I knew it's like it might sit for 2 or 3 weeks and not run. So here I'm going to fire it up dry, right? It's got the Molly on there. I figure it's got to help protect the cylinders and stuff like that for dry starts. So for old antique guys, I do the Molly skirt a lot on stuff like that. So I'd say that one's probably the one where to start if you're going to do one.
Skirt, okay.
If you're doing a blower motor and thinking about the hard anodized, again, if you're the guy that's running a consistent, motor that's not planning on burning it down, wants it to last longer, it definitely helps them last longer. But you got to have the budget for it. The hard anodized Teflon is like $75 a piston, so it's quite expensive. But
what about ceramic? What's that?
Ceramic's $43 a piston.
Okay. What about the Molly?
The Molly is about $30 a piston.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can put some money. You can add some money to.
You can add a lot of money to it, and it can get quite expensive. And but definitely, nice to have in a lot of applications, but never required. There's plenty of people out there not running any. So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. BRR Racing says another awesome live chat this evening. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. RW says DragBoss. That's me. CSMM Racing is right across the street from Tony Odo. Okay. Yep. That's cool. Because I ended up buying an engine, which I thought was a Jack Roush engine, but really I found out it was a Tony Odo engine.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
So I called Tony Odo, but he had passed, but his son, Tony Odo Jr., was there and sent me the complete, this engine was a Cleveland. In 1983, used, it sold for $14,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of interesting story. Let's see what else we have going down here. Everybody's telling that you're a great guy and great information. So we thank you for.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
It's funny. I'm always getting yelled at because my Pistons aren't getting out fast enough, and I want to go racing this weekend. So, you know how racers are. Everybody's got to go this weekend. So, and you're always wrestling with that, trying to get people's stuff out as fast as you can. So,
here's an interesting one. Steel crowns and aluminum skirts.
Steel crowns. Trying to combine the two.
I guess.
We did try to put a steel ringland and a forged piston for the diesel guys.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And I remember when we were trying it, I'm like, I don't think it's going to work. And they thought they had it figured out, but I didn't have it. It wasn't something I did. I talked to my good diesel guy about it. We had a discussion about it, and both of us I don't think it's going to work out, and it didn't. It came loose. Aluminum grows they grow at different rates. And it grows, and it eventually came loose. So So trying to put the two together, I just don't think works for that reason. They just of the expansion rates and all that. So
here's a fan. David Reed, 4743 says, we use Diamond a lot for our builds at A1 Machine Shop in Greensburg, PA.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for being here, David Reed. He also says, on a drag car, what do you recommend? Max vacuum with a vacuum pump?
What I recommend for max vacuum? I've heard of people running 18 or 20 inches, but that can pull oil away. So, but I've heard of people running numbers like that.
That's where you make your powers up there. So
yeah, it definitely makes power, but you got to be really careful with that if your oiling system and all that. So
average, I mean, I've always ran 10 to 12 usually.
Right. Right. Yeah. Usually those lower amounts, single digit numbers, 8 to 10, somewhere in that range. You're not in such a danger zone. You're right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So.
Thoughts on radial clearances for valve pockets, general rule of thumb. Do you have one?
Radial is the clearance. So radial clearance is where your valve sits in relation to the, which is usually a minimum of 50 thousandths.
50 thousandths.
Yeah.
How close can you go?
Well, that's debatable, but that's what we usually set for minimum. And on exhaust, we usually go 60.
Got it. Just for expansion.
Now, I'm sure there's pro stock guys out there running 20 or 30.
Okay.
But you got to think about how much the piston's moving around. What clearance you got piston wise, what clearance you have guide wise, how well your valves are controlled spring wise, how often are these parts changed and all that. For most people, you're better off sticking with our 50 thousandths number. Guy running, a pro stock guy is going to be in a different arena, that they're going to set them as tight as they want to set them, but they're also only making maybe a few passes and they're tearing it down.
Good point. No doubt about that. Thank you. Perry, good to see you here. Thank you, DB. You're welcome. Joe Bushell says 2438. What's your take on installing floating pins with no bushing in the rod?
So they're talking about doing a steel on steel. No, that was like your NASCAR buddy.
Yeah.
I've heard of people doing it. Yeah. I mean, most people do the coated pins at that point.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's really that much benefit to it though. I don't know. I think, other than for that reason, maybe they wanted to make that rod a little smaller. I asked him why he did that with no bushing.
Who's that now?
Your NASCAR guy that came back and said that's why they did that. Remember a few questions before?
Yeah, I mean, it's right here, that question.
Yeah. So, I mean, most people use bushings in their rods, but I've heard people not using bushings for whatever reason.
I'm looking to see if there's anybody commented or he said anything else. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next one. Here's this one. Is there an alloy that has better strength and higher temp resistance than 2618?
There has been some talk of a new alloy. I've heard rumors of it, but I don't know that anybody has it out or is really coming out with it. There has been some rumors around about a newer alloy though. So, but nothing ready to talk about prime time on.
Perfect. Optimum Performance Tim says, Cat used steel crowns, aluminum skirts held together by the pin. They were free floating.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah, I never heard of that.
But those would be probably really low RPM motors, possibly, right? That maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, big Cat truck. What are they running?
Yeah.
800,000 RPM.
Probably was a cast piston too, because now I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
The cast pistons, they do steel rings in them.
Okay.
The cast diesels, there are some cast diesel pistons out there with steel rings, but a cast piston doesn't grow like a forged piston, so it works in those.
Okay.
So I'm sure that was probably the same technology as probably a cast part that doesn't grow like a forged one. Like say, you get let's just talk what we know here. Gasoline engines, like a stock 350 Chevy, let's say with a cast piston, it's set up at like 1.5 from the factory, you know, where a forged piston is 4,000 or 5,000, you know, or more depending on the racing application. So you kind of see the difference there. You know, that cast piston doesn't really grow.
Right.
So yeah, where the forged does. So that's the difference. Yeah.
Hyper-eutectic, you know.
Yeah, hyper-eutectic is I think it's a higher silicon content of cast, basically.
Now Tim says Fords use non-bushed rods.
With the right, it really wouldn't have anything to do with the piston per se. Piston doesn't know what's in the rod. It would have more to do with the pin material, and what material pin they possibly used, whether they used a coated pin or an alloy that was compatible with the rod alloy. You know, and that has to do with hardness values and all that. That's all would be all engineering speak, as far as, you know, you can't have like two alloys that are the same hardness working against each other, basically. So one's got to be harder, one's got to be softer, you know? Yeah, right. So, but I'm sure, I could see that. Yeah. But I'm sure that, you know, it would be in the pin technology. So,
and then this gentleman says, the idea is there's no wrist pin bushing to fail at ultra high RPM because you took them out.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we got more.
You know, anytime you eliminate something, right? I mean, it could be better.
More. Yeah.
But then again, how many engines are out there with bushings, and how often do they fail? I don't really.
Application.
But, yeah. For the most of us, I don't know if anybody's ever had a problem with wrist pin bushing. But I can see that again. Anytime you take away something out of the equation that can be a possible point of issue, I'm making it simpler, right?
That's it.
So yeah.
I think we got one more question from Crouchy in Australia. Quick general question, Mike. What's the wait time on custom set of pistons for a big block Chevy? 4,600 bore, 5.3 stroke, 7.2 rod, 1.350 compression height, 706 nitrous. Thank you. We'll be in touch.
About 4 to 6 weeks right now.
4 to 6 weeks.
Right.
There it is.
We're usually the quickest. It's one thing that Diamond does really well. We're almost always the quickest in the business as far as custom pistons.
Really?
We may be higher priced than the other people, but we're always the quickest, or almost always the quickest. We strive to be the quickest. So, and we generally succeed.
Let me grab one thing. I'm going to show you something. So one of the next live chats I have coming on is a guy who worked and made pistons like this.
With holes inside, yeah.
Way back, old Pro Stock piston, BRC.
Yeah.
Have you heard of them before?
BRC, they were out of Tennessee, I think, or something. Yeah.
I don't know. It's
I think you're out of Tennessee or somewhere in there. Yeah.
So,
yeah, I do holes in the pistons on the side for super stock, comp eliminator, stuff like that. They'll get holes drilled in the side. Yeah.
Okay.
You want it super light, that's one of the places to get it. So
there it is.
On your seat. Don't do it all the time, but I do it sometimes. Yeah.
Well, we made it, Mike. 3 hours. You never thought we'd talk an hour. 3 hours. 83 people still on. 82. And I mean, that's a great live chat here. This will be on replay. So guys will come back and listen again, or guys that missed it, so they can enjoy it too. I appreciate you taking the time, Mike, to be here to educate us on piston technology, diamond pistons, customer service, that kind of thing, and your history of where you came from, Mike Knowles. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you, and yeah, this really worked out pretty well, didn't it? So
I figured you'd like it once we get going. You know.
Yeah. We didn't have any problem filling that 3. I can't believe we've been here for 3 hours.
I know it.
My wife already went to bed, I think. So.
Well, we can talk another 3 hours then. We'll see what these guys say.
I'm surprised Moonshine hasn't showed up to bother me though. She must be sleeping too.
He's already in bed. Thanks, John. Great live. I enjoy learning new stuff. It's been fun. Yes, thank you. Yes, BRC, Brooks Racing Components. Yep, you're right, Greg. Thank you, guys. We'll end it now. Remember, you're always seeing and learning something new at DragBoss Garage. So make sure you like and sub so we can keep you going, and we got more on the way.